Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest is back on, and we are going to spend a couple hours here talking about the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, where you will not see any of our players doing high knees in the aisle of the team plane while everyone else is trying to sleep, hopefully.
You don't see Gino doing that on the flight to Germany, man? Just running up and down with the high
I mean,
knees?
if it happens, I guess we'll hear about it, right?
I guess so. He'll let us know maybe, or you won't.
Eh, Well, we'll find out in a couple weeks anyway. But we are here, we are live, and we've got a game coming up here that has become maybe the game of the week somehow.
Fox has put that stamp on it, right? If they're, I'm not gonna quibble with Fox if they want to put that label on it. I'm good with that. And I
Right.
think these teams have earned the right to be called that this week.
All right. So we're gonna go through it. We're gonna talk about both sides of this very interesting and kind of odd Giants team. I don't quite know how they're here, but they are here. They are 6-1. You are what your record says you are. But sometimes there's a little more truth underneath that record that needs to be uncovered by going beyond just the wins and the losses. So I'm joined by Brandon of the Hawks Nest, as I am every twice a week, actually. Twice a week on this channel. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great. It feels even better when you're in first place. I mean, that doesn't hurt matters on top of just being all right as it is. And I'm in first place with my team, so hey, riding high.
Right. So before we get to this Giants game, though, let's go through a couple of little housekeeping notes. I think the main thing that people are going to be interested about that we've heard about so far this week is the status of Trey Brown, LJ Collier, and Travis Homer. LJ Collier has been activated. He is now on the 53 man. But Trey Brown and Travis Homer are now practicing, and those are two guys, they have a role to play on this team, I think. So that's exciting for some people. So I got to tell you, though, I've been trying to figure this out. What is Trey Brown going to do? Because we've got three corners who are playing pretty well right now. What do you see from Trey Brown when he comes back here in a week or two?
I think that there's probably, if you look at where they would be ranked at the end of the year, and this is me pulling this number completely out my butt. So don't hold me to it as far as backing this up with anything statistically, just my feeling off where Trey Brown was last year. If he's indeed at 100%, he's not merely at like 93, working his way back up to that mark. If he's at 100% to me, he's like a 70 PFF corner for you on the outside. I think that's what he gives you as far as level of play. He's not just merely a guy out there doing his job and looking good at times. He's a guy that it's got upper level ability. I'm not going to put him in Pro Bowl or all pro kind of level cornerback rating. Okay. So I don't want to get there. It's that place of nuance we go between average and, kind of between there. I think Jackson gives you like a 60 or a 58-ish. Like that's what he gives you. So there's about a 12-point difference, which maybe is not substantial and maybe not substantial enough that you want to upset the apple cart here, fix what isn't broken in doing so. So there could be a bit of a look at this of saying, let's hold this off for a second longer and let Trey work him back. He'll be here, but we'll keep Mike into the game until he shows us that he doesn't deserve to do so. Mike's had mostly good moments throughout the course of this year. Just missed his first interception last week, Brendan, on about a ball thrown right at his hands. And then he had another play that was even more impressive, which wasn't him just being thrown to it. I thought I showed it on my highlights in my post game where he's playing that off coverage. And like we've seen with Tariq Woolen this year, actually ends up driving on the ball back on an in-cutting route. And I thought that showed a lot of good acumen by him. He's also been a pretty underrated tackler from the corner position. I could factor into this as far as this going forward. So I would tend to lean to say if outside of him being 100%, they'll probably wait on Trey. He may be ready now, but not ready at that 100% level. And if that's the difference, then he sits. But if he's 100%, Brendan, what I saw of him last year at the corner position was a natural quickness and a technique to stay on top of receivers, which was very unique to him, I thought.
Right. Michael Jackson's coverage numbers so far this year are pretty spectacular. He's given up like 150 yards in coverage, I think, through 7 games, and he's played almost every snap. I know PFF doesn't love him, and I kind of understand why. He's had some penalties. But honestly, I'm looking at Michael Jackson, and I'm thinking maybe we actually have something better than we're thinking. So I'm concerned about messing with the chemistry these guys have because obviously they're not playing perfectly, but given the investment there, we're talking about a 4th-round rookie, 5th-round rookie, and what was Michael Jackson, like just some random pickup off the street, basically?
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're getting great returns, so I don't know if I want to mess with it.
I'm not looking at this defense saying this is the place we have to make a change right now. I think that what they will have is Michael on a bit of a short leash, or on a short glove. But I
Oh
think
boy.
you saw it. That was a bad one. But they did this with him a little bit early in the year, where when he was struggling and Sidney Jones got back to full health, they did mix a little bit of both of them in there in games at times. So they have, and he hasn't struggled in all games, but there's been a couple of games where he had a little moments there where it was a little rough, and the coaching staff was like, let's see if we get Sidney out there back to what he was last year. So if he does get to that point where there's that struggle, I think there will be a very short hook to get him off the field at that point, with Trey sitting there waiting kind of in the wings. I think the coaching staff is very high on Trey, and rightfully so. Again, that he was very impressive last year on his tape. It wasn't merely by accident, his performance and how he was playing. It was one of the more impressive. I mean, we got Tariq blowing up this year, and if not for him, I'd be saying that was one of the most impressive rookie corner performances I've seen from a Seahawk in the Pete Carroll era last year.
Yeah, I agree. It was a short-lived window, but for a team that really didn't have much of a pass rush at that point either, he played well.
Yeah. He was out. It was just, and then we haven't had a lot of corners at that same spot. This wasn't Shaquille Griffin coming on in his first year and sort of holding on for dear life and looking okay doing so. This was him really, I'm not going to say locking guys down, but him just being on it in a way that you don't usually see from rookies.
I agree. So I think that's the main thing. I think we all have a pretty good understanding that Travis Homer is going to be the 3rd down back and a special teamer, which is valuable.
Yes.
Do you think Collier gets on the field?
Does he have to?
Well, no, he doesn't. I mean, you've got a pretty nice rhythm on that D-line right now.
I mean, I got to deactivate Miles Adams to let LJ Collier get in that game? No. Yeah. And the coaching staff should no way near come close to making that decision. Miles Adams was your 2nd-rated player last week. He's actually shown some flashes here over the course of the last few weeks and when he's been in there. I've liked what I've seen him from an effort standpoint, and he can actually give you an assemblage of pass rush moves, which LJ Collier does not have at all. I don't buy that he had his best offseason and learned how to use his hands. He hasn't used them since college. He isn't going to use them now. And he's good, maybe insurance if something goes bad with one of these other frontline guys to go down. Let's face it, maybe you could look at Jefferson and say he hasn't exactly given you a great performance so far. You know, you look, he seems to always be kind of at the low end of the PFF scores, and he's had a couple flash sack moments, I think. But I can't remember him, Brendan, getting a lot of consistent pass rush. So maybe that would be a spot you could look at that you could address with LJ. And certainly, Brendan, look, he is a natural 3-4 defensive end. I think he's maybe one of the most naturally built guys outside of a Shelby Harris on this team to play that position. But boy, he's just shown me enough on tape at this point. I don't mean to throw him down the canyon, but I'm just a little bit at a point where I think I've seen what I need to see from him. I don't think that there's a lot left in there that he's got to unveil at this point at 20. What is he, 26 now? Is he 27? No?
Sounds about right.
Is what he is.
Yeah, I agree. As of right now, I definitely don't want to mess things up because that defensive line, they've got a little something going on there with this 6-man group. And I think a big part of it has just been schematically, you've switched things up a little bit. But I don't feel any need to put Collier out there. You have no investment in him past this year anyway, so there's no value there.
No, you don't. It is what, I mean, it's a good insurance throughout the course of the year, because that's the best you got is if somebody goes down, and somebody's possibly likely to go down in a 17-game season. You know, we've already seen Shelby Harris get dinged up a little bit at times, and guys can get beat up. So you've got him there for that. That's fine for me. I think you did mention Travis Homer, which I think is a part we should almost talk more about, because this is probably one of the top 6 best 3rd down backs in the league for what he brings in total and skill to the position. Is that overstating?
I'd have to look at a list of 3rd down backs, but in general, I think you're onto something there. Yeah.
I definitely say that as a top 6 is saying it's not, I don't think if we were to look at it, like there's a lot of great 3rd down backs in this league necessarily, but I do think that he's carved out that role for this team, and he's really done a good job of not just being, he's a good runner out of shotgun, or, you can rely on with him his hands. He's a fantastic blocker as well in pass protection that you're getting back. This also then bumps Homer down to where now we can fit out the 3 roles here for these running backs. I get my Cerebus finally, Brendan. I get my Cerebus. And so everything kind of carves out nicely with the roles. Maybe nobody gets quite overworked at that point. Dallas fits into the Kenneth Walker role. Walker fits into the Penny role, and Travis Homer's back running the third down duties. So this does maybe help a little bit with the load balancing as well there.
Yeah, that's a big concern to me. I don't really like Ken Walker having 50 plus snaps in a game. It's probably not the end of the world, but I'm just a little cautious
No,
about
you're
that.
right. You're right to be worried here, man, because this is our problem here at times, right? We've seen this with a lot of Thomas Rawls, Chris Carson. We get a good one in here and he starts rolling and Pete's like, I like this guy. Give him more. Give him more. And they're like, Pete, no, he's going to break down over the course of the year. No, he won't. He's stronger than ever. He could be just like Marshawn. Keep going. And then the guy gets broken right at a key point right before the years. You're going into like a playoff push time. And I hope that they try to ease off the stick a little bit here with Kenneth Walker as going along the year. I've got some faith in Homer and Dallas to run the ball. And maybe they're not going to provide you the same level of impact of Walker, but he can't be at 20 plus carries a year in his rookie year in every single one of these games. I'm going to get really worried about that and getting him beat up, which let's not go down that path. We've been down this path before of overusing a guy, They end up with like 20. How many? There's one year with Carson. I think he's on pace for like 350, 400 touches or something. It's like ridiculous deep into the season.
Yeah, I know what you mean. All right, here, let's get to some of these super chats here. Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $5. If we were 5-2 instead of 4-3, would this game be flexed to Sunday night? I think it's too early in the year for games to get flexed.
Yeah, Mark, you can only have flexing games on the back half of the schedule. So when they kick in, it's at a certain point of the year, and then they can start to do it. I wondered why this was the case, and somebody made a good point in my chat at the time we were talking about this, being that it's probably because you just get a lot of the fan base pissed off because so many people would have to constantly be changing their plans throughout the course of the year. It wouldn't be worth the blowback that you probably get from so much, I guess. But then you also go, you're already doing it for kind of almost half the season, I feel like, anyway. So, what's the difference at that point? Is the blowback that much more significant with 8 more games or whatever it be, 10 more games?
Yeah. And, watching the Packers potentially die on national TV is compelling. So I don't know if they flex that out.
Well, and we gotten to see Russell go off the rails. And we've been able to find entertainment and value in some of it. So for some of us fans, it's been, for how it's been horrific for some, it's been great for others, wonderful on the other end of it. So it'd be cool if they did. It'd be great to see that in CenturyLink at night. The crowd really into it, knowing the team's starting to really play good and not just this is a rebuild year or we're punting it. But it's okay. It also at least keeps the team on schedule now at 1:00, keeps them locked into their normal schedule program.
Right. I agree with that. R. Sanchez, thank you for the $2. Put 8 in the box and force Daniel to throw. So I think this is a pretty good opportunity to start talking about this upcoming game on Sunday. The New York Giants are rolling into town. Interesting team. So let's start with this Giants offense because you look at it and you don't quite know how they've done it. Now, when I say done it, they're 18th in the league in points. So they're not that good. They're okay. They're average, slightly below average, but it's an offense that has a bunch of no-name receivers. It's a real mess at wide receiver for them. They just traded Kadarius Toney, so he's not coming back to save the season anytime soon. No. They've lost Daniel Bellinger, their number 1 tight end, and I like Bellinger a lot, actually. I was impressed.
Yeah, me too.
They got some stuff on the offensive line. I think Evan Neal's probably going to miss this game.
Mm-hmm.
But this offense, let's start with Daniel Jones, because when Daniel Jones came into the league, I really wanted him to be good because he seemed like a cool guy, seemed like he would be fun to root for. I just wanted him to be good, but I didn't think he would be. But finally here in year 4, we're getting a pretty good Daniel Jones. What do you think of Danny Dimes?
I wasn't as high on him as some other people were, and you weren't alone. There were some folks that saw sort of Peyton Manning-like comparisons to him coming out. That was the comp that I heard most.
No, I was. Believe me, I didn't love him. I just wanted him to be good.
Oh, okay.
More than I thought he would be good. It's like he's a doofus.
You did say that. You did say that. Sorry, I got stuck on the first part of that. No, I just wasn't big on him coming out. And I thought he was going to be limited as a passer, and he's been limited as a passer. And this year, Brendan, he is limited as a passer. Yes, the receiver core is definitely a work in progress. Galladay's been a horrific signing for them on the outside. I don't know if he's playing or not. I think he's on that injured list. I don't know if you
He's
mentioned him.
out.
He's
And even
out.
if he's healthy, they might not play him because he's
Even if
terrible.
even if he's healthy, it might be for the best that he's injured. As you spoke about, Kadarius Tony, who they couldn't even really get on the field anyway. I don't love that trade for the Chiefs, by the way. We can maybe talk about that a little bit later. But yes, he's not hitting his receivers. Look at his numbers. It's check down city. It's to tight ends. It's to Barkley. He is what this is it's Brian Daboll protecting the hell out of a quarterback that he's know is limited. I saw this last year with Sean Payton and Jameis Winston in the start of the season that Jameis had, where he's been dealing with Drew Brees for years. So Sean Payton understood, okay, I got a quarterback who's going to throw a lot of interceptions. If I let him run wild, I got to keep this under lock and key. I think Daboll's doing the same thing here with Daniel Jones. There's a lot of kitschy college elements to it, a lot of read option stuff to a one read look or run stuff, right? It's not him going through a whole bunch of reads. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of under center, then play action. They're looking for the big play with Barkley. So Barkley's still in that, he's like that Sean Alexander running back, Brendan, where it's like, dink, 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 1 yard, 2 yard, negative 2 yard, 42 yards. So he's not really doing anything magnificent this year. To me, he's using his legs. He's running wild as much as he can and imparting that in as much as he can, but he's staying within the context of the offense. He's not beating himself. And Daboll's doing a good job, in my opinion, of kind of protecting him. But he is still limited as a passer. He's limited with his accuracy. His mechanics are not always the cleanest, especially when he's being asked to move around in the pocket. Things get really out of whack. And I think you can definitely kind of get to him on that. Their line is also not, in my opinion, pass protecting all that well for him still. So he's under quite a bit of duress there, which is probably also impacting maybe some of his bad mechanics here after a couple of years of this now.
Right. So, yeah, their offensive line, I'm looking at the PFF scores. It's kind of a disaster except for Andrew Thomas, who is good. But otherwise, it's a disaster. Evan Neal was not playing that well, by the way, and he's out. So the guy behind him is now coming in. It's a mess of an offensive line. The one game they lost this year to the Cowboys, I think he took like 25, 30 hits in that game.
I was watching that game on my last look here before the show, actually, and watched a couple of them, but that's been kind of a common element I've seen in all their games is you get that feeling sometimes in games. And let me relate it to the Rams playoff game a couple years ago at home. Okay. The one with the DK bubble screen that went back for a pick six.
Right.
Remember how every time Russell dropped back in that game, it just felt like an avalanche upon him. Like the line just, and that's what it feels like with the Giants is every time you just see the white of the avalanche coming over the slopes down upon him. And maybe that's affecting a little bit of him and how they're protecting him and making the throws just short little pot shots there, here and there and everywhere. But he is nonetheless being protected in it. And they do nonetheless have poor pass protection, which Brendan should work highly in our favor when you're talking about CenturyLink and hopefully a fan base that's somewhat galvanized right now by how this current team is playing.
You would agree with the comment, put 8 in the box and force Daniel to throw. Do you concur?
Yes, you've got to get it. I mean, I put 8 in the box just to squeeze the zone tights on the front side too. I mean, that's the thing with this. And maybe this is a little bit of a key on this, of course, is this is going to go against Coach Carroll's predilection, which is to keep stuff deep and keep stuff protected deep. Now, instead, you're going to ask him in this game maybe to come up and squeeze this stuff a little bit tighter. I have a little optimism, though, Brendan, in this regard. You have just played 2 teams in the Cardinals and the Chargers that are right along the same mold and how they were trying to execute against you. And that we're going to just try to dink and dunk you short and work our way up and beat your soft zones. We know you're going to drop deep and try to protect against the deep ball. And to Coach Carroll's credit and to Clint Hurtt's credit as the defensive coordinator, they were doing a lot of pressing those zones a lot tighter in those last 2 games. That's been a big part of the success, I think. So now you have another team that's going to attack along those same lines where it's not the deep shots, but the small stuff. Maybe they can stay in that same rhythm here in this particular game. It stood out to me in person in the Cardinal game, seeing how much you can see the linebackers where it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps in a back pedal off the snap. And you're like, oh my God, you're going to go into that deep of a zone. And you just see the running back curl right underneath. And you're going, they're going to take that all day, Titans game from last year. But no, the last couple of weeks, right there up in the face, they're pressing these quarterbacks to push the ball up the football field.
Yeah, and with these corners against these receivers, you should kind of be able to just kind of boss them around, right? Like you've got
100%.
Darius Slayton. I kind of like Darius Slayton, but he's not that good. He's got bad hands, but he's got speed on the outside. Wandale Robinson, I think he was the Kentucky guy.
Good player.
I
He's
like
beat.
him.
He is a little beat up coming into
Mhm.
this game, just a little bit.
Yeah. Then after that, it's just kind of nothing.
No, they've got I think a James guy, I think is his name or something. I
They've
forget his
got a
name.
Johnson guy. I don't know too much about him.
Yeah, it's and watching the tape on him, man, they're not particularly fast. Richie James, that was the other guy.
Mm.
He's the guy's leading them in catches right now at 20, but that's 20 for 191 yards through 6 games. It's not
Yeah.
exactly, he's not setting a pace here.
Mhm.
It stood out. Look, they're not quick off the line. They don't run particularly great routes. They don't have particularly great hands. There's not, this receiving core does not provide a lot of threats at you. And all the more reason, Brendan, why in this game you should play with a little bit more of a let's squeeze this. Let's get up tight. Let's shut down the running game. 8 in the box. Yeah, it should be 8 in the box all day long in this game, as far as I'm concerned. I would, just don't let the team beat you in the way they're beating all these other teams. How are they beating the other teams? Is it Daniel Jones throwing the ball up the football field? No, it's they're running the ball on everybody basically. So, and this is in combination with Daniel Jones the last couple of years. Has he beaten anybody throwing the ball in the last couple of years? No, not really. So let's press them into their weakness. Let's force them into what they don't want to do rather than what they do want to do, and trust our odds with it. But again, it's really going to be tough in this because this does go against Coach Carroll and what he wants to do from an identity standpoint in running his defense.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like getting Tariq Woolen playing at this level so quickly is kind of enabling him to do different things, because that's a guy you can
Fair
trust
point.
to put in an awkward spot and he'll make up for it.
You saw it last week in the game with Michael Williams, right? On that, remember that deep route down the field where Tariq's with him down the field? Did you see any safety help over the top on that play? Did you see any other defenders in a deep zone around him running up like late on the play, like they were just 5 yards away in another zone deep? No, he was 1-on-1, 45 yards down the field with him running step for step. And so I agree. I think he's been emboldened by that a little bit to maybe press this stuff a little bit tighter, as he should.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I don't think they're going to have Bellinger, so that's one of their top receiving targets that they're not going to have. Their backup tight end is some guy I've never heard of, so I don't think he's done much of anything in the NFL. So yeah, it's a passing attack that should be something you can take care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say there's no reason to feel fearful of what they're going to do throwing the football in this game. It's all about the running game.
All right. David Pugh, thank you for the 1999. McAfee said that draft capital doesn't matter, saying teams like the Rams and Bucks have just added vets and said F them picks and won Super Bowls. Also said draft picks don't matter in today's NFL. Thoughts? I heavily disagree. Well,
You go for it first on this one.
It depends on the situation you're in as a team. If you're in a situation where you're 1 or 2 players away from competing, and you see that guy available for a trade, then yeah, you should probably say to hell with the draft picks. Let's try to win the Super Bowl now. But for most teams that are not in that position, they're rebuilding. They're in the process of building up to something really good. Most teams, the answer is draft capital absolutely matters. And as a Seahawks fan, watching what this rookie class is doing right now, I don't see how any Seahawks fan could disagree with that. There are circumstances where you go, forget the draft. I need to make some trades here. I need to get some players who can help me now. But this was not that time. And also, what trades did the Buccaneers
I was
make?
just going to thank you. That's the part that I was just starting to twist over my head is the Bucks. The Bucks said F them picks. Which picks? To whom?
Yeah. Who were some of the guys they relied on when they made that Super Bowl run? It was, you had guys you brought in like Brady and Fournette, but you had Mike Evans, who you drafted. I think they drafted Chris Godwin. I think they drafted Winfield Jr. It's Winfield Jr.,
No,
right?
they made no, I'll skip to, they made no trades, literally no trades. And what that's saying, when McAfee's saying that, he's saying the Bucks added vets like they added vets by making the same trades the Rams have made in recent years. And it's 2 different dichotomies at play in the way that these 2 organizations have gone about their business. But yes, you mentioned names like Tristan Wirfs. They just drafted when they got Brady. They didn't trade that high pick away to go get a name guy. They stuck with their draft protocol and took the best guy. Levante David drafted from within. Devin White drafted from within. Vita Vea drafted from within. Antoine Winfield Jr. drafted from within. All the receivers you all mentioned, absolutely 100%. So that's not the case. The Rams are really the only one that's taken this road. So because one team takes that road, I don't know that I say that that's absolutely a rule of thumb. Even the Kansas City Chiefs have shown some recent history, especially moving on from a guy like Tariq Hill to accumulate draft capital. They've shown a willingness to actually, favor draft picks more than, throw them away. It's one thing to sign. It's another thing to trade.
Right. Yeah. There may come a time when it makes sense to give up your draft picks for that one extra player, like the Seahawks did once with Percy Harvin. And in theory, that would have been brilliant. Unfortunately, things didn't work out for unforeseen circumstances that I don't think anybody could have predicted, at least to that degree, to where you literally just had to give him away to get him away from your team because he was about to kill somebody on the roster. But yeah, you most of the time you want to keep those draft picks, especially right now with the rookie salary cap keeping these contract values low. This isn't like the old days where you didn't want to have the number one pick because it just meant you would be giving 70 million, 80 million to Jamarcus Russell and Sam Bradford. That's not happening right now.
Yeah. I think, and there's really rarely that I'm gonna have a rule of thumb that I can apply like this so broadly, Brendan. I think you're the same way. There's rarely in anything with football where I say, it's like, we can't take a running back in the first or second. Well, I'll maybe say maybe not in the first round, but even that when I go, well, but show me the prospect, right? Like, am I getting Adrian Peterson? Am I getting Marshawn Lynch? Maybe. Here's the thing. The problem I have with that is it misses all of context of a situation. Where's your team at? Like you said, where am I picking in the draft, Brendan? How strong is that particular draft? We've talked about this in our draft ramp ups. It'll come up again this year. What are the tiers at? There's tier 1, there's tier 2. I might be picking 27th in the first round of a draft, but the value is not going to be there for the guy that I'm going to get. And there's more value to be had out there via the trade market. This is why the Rams, for instance, have been pressed to probably go this direction, as they know we're picking 26, 27. This is why our Seahawks went that direction with trades of Jamal Adams and Jimmy Graham. They specifically mentioned it, in fact. They said it's hard picking back there. It's hard to find those guys, and the fans have an expectation at that point. This guy should be so good because he's a first-round pick. It's a first-round pick. So that's where I can understand. I'm more willing, Brendan, if I'm a team in the back of those 20s, to do that kind of trade and make those kind of moves. I like that aggressiveness, maybe not to full Jamal Adamsville, but I'm okay with the Jimmy Graham thing. I think the Jimmy Graham one was actually, kind of smart in retrospect. It's just that they didn't apply it right. They brought him in and then changed his role from what he was with the Saints. So that was really that issue that was mainly in play there, but I like the theory behind it at least.
Right. So yeah, I disagree. By the way, just as kind of, this is an anecdote, but it's a powerful one. I knew a guy who was a Texans fan who took this exact same philosophy when Bill O'Brien started trading away all their draft picks. He was like, "Oh, screw it. Let's trade for AB too. Let's trade all our picks. Who cares about draft picks?" He bought into it 100%, was like, Bill O'Brien is a genius. Never questioned my GM/coach again. And look where he is right now. Trust me, he regrets everything he said. He deeply, like to this day, people laugh at him because of how bad he looked when he said that. So sometimes yes, but not all the time.
I think there's been some growing support for going all in from a financial standpoint, and that you could say that's a very strong place to operate from. Chiefs went all in financially. Tampa Bay went all in. Rams went all in financially. The Broncos in 2015, remember they had that off season where they signed all those defensive guys to add to the crew to kind of top it off a little bit. There was TJ Ward, Nakeem Talib, and DeMarcus Ware. They helped to kind of buy themselves a little bit of a championship there with that. Now they had a good base already, and I'm okay with doing that. But when we're talking about making all these trades across the board for guys and just offloading draft capital, that's not proven to necessarily be a smart direction to go. And while the Rams did get themselves through the eye of the needle last year in pulling off that Super Bowl win, it will remain to be seen if long-term this was the appropriate approach for that franchise.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to get off the idea that they did the right thing because they did win the Super Bowl and that's the goal. But
I'm not going to knock them on it. I'm just the price they'll pay on the other side of it could be fairly substantial. When you look at the guaranteed money they have kicking in, if they don't get anywhere past that one Super Bowl, it's worth it. I'd do it, Brendan. I'm not saying I wouldn't make that deal with the devil necessarily, but it still is, there is that price that maybe they ultimately pay, which, people act like it's all house money and what they're spending right now. Like there wasn't any cost that'll come down the track. And it's like, it's going to come down at some point and it's going to be hard to overcome.
Yeah, sure. Jeff Speak, thank you for the $20. Pete has been checked this year by the owner, and John was able to actually do his job. Pete was egotistical over the past 2 years. Pete is lucky that Gino is the S, what with the OC. Yeah, I think a lot of people, including me and Brandon, have theorized that John had a lot more say in the draft this year. We'll never know for sure, but there's some anecdotal evidence that indicates it. Like Pete lost his title on the Seahawks website, I believe, last year.
Yeah. Jeff, if I was a betting man and placing bets that Pete had been removed from some of his player personnel control power, I would be putting it all in that side. I don't have anything to back it up, though, to say that I know it for sure, but I would certainly put it on that. As well as I think that, yes, Pete's definitely gotten the benefit from Gino and having the offensive coordinator, Sean Waldron, starting to show he's really very capable. We've got to give Pete credit for hiring Waldron and for considering him and bring him in. And really where I've got to give Pete most credit, at least offensively, and hopefully I'll get to say this defensively for Pete when we get to the end of the year, is that he's updated something that had been stifled, something that had not evolved for a long period of time. And it's one of the places, Brendan, where the conversations get so simple now and just I always see things white to black in these discussions where it's like, well, now all the people that question Pete Carroll, now they got to eat all this crow and stuff. It's like, well, people question Pete Carroll had a right to do so. He had shown you a lack of mobility and he's shown you needed to make these changes. But he has made them, and we've got to give him credit for making it, and got to give credit for in some way or another signing off, or at least not making a stew about moving off from Russell Wilson and getting out of that with the right time with the maximum assets back as that looks like. So it's, you got to give it kind of both ways, I think, to Pete Carroll on that. You give him the tip of the cap in one respect. And, you're also happy that you remove that player personnel control. It's also, Jeff, this is why I like to cite even just historically within our organization, what we've done, even though that might not always make sense, because I think there's lessons you learn within that, especially when you see common patterns. You took away that power from Mike Holmgren. Within a couple of years, you got yourself to a Super Bowl. You take this power away from Coach Carroll now, maybe we get our back to the Super Bowl. Now he just gets to be a coach, doesn't have his hands in as many pies. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I don't think anybody can argue with the results that we've gotten out of this draft. And I mean, next year's probably going to be, I don't want to say better, but we're going to have more picks than we even did last year. So yeah, it could be
more picks and maybe higher picks.
Yeah. All right. Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $5. Richie James is their leading receiver and on pace for over 500 yards. So is the game plan to contain 26 in Jones runs. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this a little bit here. One of the feel-good stories in the NFL this year, number 26, Saquon Barkley, seemed like his career was kind of over. He's back, and his combination of power and speed is not something you see all that often in the NFL. So what do you think about Saquon so far this year in his comeback player of the year campaign?
Well, he's a legitimate threat for us in this game. I mean, more so than Daniel Jones. You got Saquon, and it does come to contain because he's a guy, even going back to college, like I said, there'll be a guy kind of lull you to sleep a little bit with a 2-yard run, negative 2-yard run, 3-yard run, and then bam, he hits you for a big one. He's a guy that was picked, I think, top 5. And of course, that was to a lot of outcry. But again, as we were talking about the certain guys you make exception for from a talented aspect of things, you could have perhaps said he was that guy you would make that exception for to pick them in the first round. I don't know about top 5, but definitely one that maybe you could say should go in the first round for where his talent was. He was that legitimately good with what he brought together. He's different from...
Sorry, it was either that or the Giants take Sam Darnold. So I got to say they probably did the right thing.
That's true. This may end up proving golden for them at the end of the day on this one when it's all said and done. He's different from Kenneth Walker. To me, Kenneth Walker's a pace guy with that ability to just kind of go from stop to start to fast, almost like a Porsche a little bit. Whereas he's more of the, like a drag race car that'll, when he locks in, he gets that first 2 steps to lock him in. And as he locks in, whatever he does out of those first 2 steps is going to be explosive, and you don't know which way he's going to necessarily go. He's got an ability to kind of It's almost like a guy dribbling, giving you a crossover. You don't know when the crossovers are coming, but you can see him lock in with those. He'll take the ball, and then he gets into those two. I was watching the film, and he locks into the first two steps, gets planted, and then he's going to decide to do something awesome or try to do something awesome. And so that's where the contain really comes in, because he's so explosive and quick out of that, Brendan. And it's where they both, him and Kenneth, have that stop and start thing a little bit to them, but just very much different runners a little bit in the way that they go about their business in that. And that he's then just going to try to get up to speed. He's not going to try to get back to a stop part. He's going to get up to speed and just start trying to cut up and down. Walker will stop and start and cut back around, and he'll do 15 other little moves in the time frame that a guy like Barkley's just going to try to get up there and get to himself, to get to the top end speed. Because he does have that. That's another place they have some comparison, is the top end speed is probably legitimately in the same or similar territory. Barkley's not been bad through the first part of his career. He's just been beat up and injured. We saw this with Rashad Penny. Just could not get healthy. Just every time he's on the field, something else is popping up. Not always the same thing. This year, he's finally able to stay healthy and show off what made him that first round pick.
Yeah, I remember he did a lot of dancing over the last couple of years as well. That played a part in why his career got derailed a little bit. A lot of times he would just like try to make the big play when the big play wasn't there, and he'd end up taking a loss of yards that he just didn't need to. But this year, it seems like he's hitting the hole with a lot more assertiveness, which has been big.
He's got explosiveness, but I don't know if I'd go full calling it quickness, if that makes sense, right? Like he'll burst out of that 2 feet that he puts down the ground and go. But if he's dancing, like Walker can dance because he can get back up to speed so quick. So he'll give you that explosiveness, and then he's quick with it. Barkley's kind of now a build-up speed guy off the explosion. So explode and then kind of did it. No, now I'm fast. By the 4th, 5th step, I'm really going. So he's a guy that probably does need to run a little bit more along those lines, and he's probably more devastating doing so. It's probably also helping him. And I think that offensive line is at least a little bit more come together for him this year than it's been in the past, where I think that's been one of the worst probably offensive lines across the board in recent years.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $5. Not understanding their success scares me even more. Not like they've been beating bums. They got even more legit wins than us. Denver no longer counts. Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, every game they play, it's kind of like a few people have brought this comp, the 2019 Seahawks. Every game is close, and then every break goes their way at the end of the game. Like, ever since week 1, that game against the Titans, where the Titans kind of had the game won. Tannehill threw a ridiculous interception. Giants got the touchdown, got the 2-point conversion. Titans kicker missed a game-winning field goal that was like, I want to say 47 yards. Just they get break after break. They played Baltimore, and Lamar basically just decides, I don't want to win this game. You guys have it. Like, for no reason, just one of the worst decisions I've ever seen Lamar make. They've had another game or two like that this year. It's like
the Titans by 1.
Yeah, they beat the Titans by 1, and the Titans had a buzzer-beating field goal to win the game that just missed, like 47-yarder. Most kickers make that kick. That kick is made most of the time. So I don't know. I obviously they're doing something right, but they remind me of the 2019 Seahawks that got every break at the end of close games, whether it was winning the coin toss in overtime or having ridiculous just kind of end of game fluke just swing their way. And to a certain extent it is real, but I don't think they're 6-1 good. I just don't right now.
I tend to agree with Brendan on this one, Jeffrey. I think that they're a little bit of what we thought we were going to look like offensively this year, which is, just to Brendan's point on this, you're sort of just lurching your way up the football field, getting just enough points to get you by. They're doing a brand of football also because of their commitment to the running the ball, not only to Saquon, but with Daniel Jones. They're squeezing down a lot of games. They're constricting a lot of games. They're minimizing the possessions, which is going to bring tighter football games down to the end. And to Brendan's point on this, Jeffrey, when you're down in tight games at the end, it can come down to one ball bouncing one way or one kicking going a little bit astray. And that can be the determining factor, especially when you have, for instance, a small sample size, which is where we're at right now with only 7 games played in this year. That doesn't tend to be something that's going to last over the course of a full season. You will have what they call regression to the mean, usually eventually. Sometimes teams are just magically touched and they can get all the way through the year getting through those kind of games and make their way. We've seen it before. That's the NFL at times, certainly. But more often than not, the regression to the mean kicks in and the limited offense ends up becoming limited, and the defense which is maybe playing a little bit over its skis, starts to fall a little bit more down to earth.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, they had the game against the Packers where they were down in the fourth quarter, and then they were able to score 2 touchdowns late to win. The Jacksonville game, they literally won by a yard because the Jaguars receiver got tackled at the 1, down by
Yeah.
6. So literally won by 1 yard. This is a team that is well coached. They don't make mistakes at the end of games, and that's all well and good. But you look at the roster, and you're not quite sure how they got to this point where they're 6-1. Still not leading the division, actually, now that I think about it. But I'm aware that I may be walking into a little bit of a trap here, but I'm going to just say it right now. I feel good about this game going into it.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I'd be sharing your fear if we were in New York. You're in New York, this is a 10 a.m. game. I'm with you 100% with that. If I'm at home, and they've got to travel across the country here, and I look at their injury situation as it stands right now, and I look and see the fact that there's not really somebody that's going to destroy us offensively there, that's really a huge threat, which will allow us to try to then really get down and press on what they're going to try to do from their running game standpoint. To me, that bears out well for us at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. David Pugh, thank you for the $4.99. These are things he said on his show today. He mentioned the Bucks, not me. Keep me out of it.
Oh no, you're good, David. I wasn't blaming you, man. I was saying
Right.
just simply McAfee. So it was just weird where McAfee got that one with the Bucks. I was like, that's two different teams doing two different things.
Mm-hmm. And he also sent, thank you for the $4.99. Love McAfee though. Great show. Almost as good as this duo of studs on B&B.
Ah, so kind of you, man.
Yeah. McAfee seems pretty good.
I like
don't
McAfee.
watch,
Yeah,
I don't watch
awesome.
all of it, but it seems good.
No, he's great. I don't mind. He makes me laugh. They got some good segments there. So I like McAfee too. I do. But thank you, David. Very kind of you, man.
R. Sanchez, thank you for the 513. Will Chicago be more willing to trade Smith after the Quinn trade? You would think so.
It's brutal watching him crying the other day when they informed him of the trade of Roquan, or they were asking him about the trade of Roquan. The guy's tied enough with that guy. You just go, boy, I felt like being like Moses walking into Chicago. It's like, let my middle linebacker go. I was like,
yeah. Was he crying because he's jealous because he wants out of there too? I don't get it. It's like you want out of there too, buddy. Like
maybe that was it. Maybe it was like they said I was going to be next. I don't even like Roquan. I don't even like Robert. Yeah, maybe I look, they should, Sanchez. I don't understand why you're holding. The only reason they would hold him is if they're going to get like Rick James cold-blooded levels with this guy right now. And what I mean by that is that they're planning on throwing the franchise tag on him this offseason, which to me would be brutal. I believe he's already in his 5th-year option period here. He's earned the extension. Man's leading the league in tackles. He's got a couple sacks. He's got a couple interceptions. If you're not willing to pay him at this point, like I said, let him go. Do right by the guy. He's done right by you since he's been there as a rookie. He's been everything you thought he was going to be when you drafted and more. So, S or get off the pot. If you're the Chicago front office here, pay the man or trade the man. Don't do we're going to pull you into the offseason and put a franchise tag on him. But that's again, for a franchise is going to try to turn it around. Do you think that's going to endear you to people you're going to try to bring in there if you go that route? And if you're not going to go that route, then you're just going to lose him for nothing. So what's the point in not moving him now to get something?
Well, you get the compensatory pick, right?
If they're not going to sign any free agents, but are you going to bring Justin Fields back next year without signing some free agent offensive lineman somewhere with the shape of that team? And I know that they're sitting on cap space because who are they paying? They've got to be sitting on a gargantuan amount. So I don't think they can play the compensatory game, quite frankly.
On a fundamental level, is that the worst franchise in the league right now in terms of the way they go about their business?
Ooh, it's a good question, Brennan. There's some bad ones running, but
like this is not new. Like I remember they did this to Lance Briggs way back in the day.
Yeah, it's not a cash-rich ownership group, I don't believe, if I were to make a wild guess at that. And I think you're probably onto something. I mean, it's one that doesn't have a firm commitment to a philosophy. They move through coaches and general managers like some people go through shoes. And I don't always understand what even this new administration, Brendan, like we didn't draft Justin Fields, so it's like not our problem. That's the attitude that they've taken here. They didn't try to get him anything better as far as offensive linemen. They moved Tevin Jenkins from right tackle to guard this year, who is just coming into his 2nd year. In Roquan, you've not decided to sign him, but then you're not willing to trade him either. It's like, you're this new administration. This is what you're doing. Well, I'm sure that we're assessing, I feel like is what they're doing, but to me, I don't get any of that. That's reactionary then as a general manager in a front office. And that's how they felt for years now. Everything has felt kind of reactionary in where they go, and they don't seem to have much of a plan that they want to put in place.
Yeah. Isn't their owner like 103 years old or something?
Something like that. It's been owned for like a couple generations too. So it's one of those kind of deals, but I just, they're weird. Even the Trubisky pick a couple years ago with it, where like that one, you're going, what? Like 1 year production in North Carolina? What? With other quarterbacks in that draft that look by far better. Okay.
Yeah, that was an all-timer.
It was.
Yeah, I was at a draft party watching that draft with a former Bears player, actually, who my dad was friends with. Not a big-time player or anything, but he used to play for the Bears. He also played for the Seahawks at one point, older guy. And that was, he was not amused.
No, it was you watched Trubisky and you went, a top 5 pick? There's no way. There's no way you looked at his college film and said, that's a top 5 pick right there. That was them stretching and squinting their eyes. And it's just one of the, there are these draft picks that happen that are just silly draft picks in the moment. And they're still silly draft picks 5 years beyond. But that's where, to me, that spoke of a thing that was like an idea they woke up off of like their owner woke up and his head popped off the pillow on the day of the draft. And he's like, it's Trubisky. And they had to like give draft picks up to go get him, I think, and trade up to get him. And, this situation though with Roquan Smith is just silly and ridiculous. I know he's his own agent. I know that that provides barriers to getting the deal done. I don't care. The guy is balled out of control throughout the course of his career for you since the second you drafted him. And again, can be arguably he's playing the best middle linebacker in the sport right now. What is he got to send up a damn beacon to get you to finally wake up and say, well, we'll pay him or send him to a team that will? I know if we traded for him, we'd probably pay him to get that production. He's only 25, 26 years old. So there's got to be another team out there probably willing to do the same.
Right. Okay. Benson DeWalt, thank you for the $1.99. Appreciate the content, fellas. I don't have cable. And a lot of people don't these days.
No, but happy to provide the entertainment, Benson.
I still have cable. There's still a couple things that I just need to have on it. Like, I don't think there's any way to get the Mariners without cable.
Yeah, I do the Fubo thing for Mariners, and you get some Seahawks games on that one. So I'll go with that one. It's like $70 a month or something to get those. But that's about as far as I'll go without. I won't do the cable box ever again. I don't think, not the full on box.
Right. The Snail, thank you for the $2. Carroll is a top 5 head coach. Seahawks fans are spoiled. Yeah, ranking coaches is hard because it's so fluid. Is my thing. Like, I'm trying to think about it now. Like, you would, of course, say that Belichick's a better coach than Carroll, right? But Belichick's losing his mind right now. Like, would you really say that?
I think fluid's a good way of putting it. I think the Snail, the important part of this is top 5 coach when? This year? Yeah, Carroll's a top 5 coach this year. Was he a top 5 coach in 2019? I don't know. Was he in 2013? 100%. Best coach in the league. 2012? Yeah, 100%. Probably top 3 coach that year. So it's much like with players. I think it can be performative level wise variant. I think as well with Carroll, you can't make the assessment of Coach Carroll without making the assessment of him with the player personnel and the guys that he brings in and how he uses them. I think that's usually a place with head coaches that you can separate. I don't think that we can do that as much with Carroll over recent years because a lot of the issue and problem has been about how you've applied guys you've drafted, where you put them, and what position you put them in to succeed or lack thereof.
Right. It's just a very fluid thing. Like, the job he did in 2019 was terrible. The job he did in 2018, I thought was great. A lot of people think that was his best coaching job ever.
Agreed. Yeah.
2020, it was okay, I guess. 2021, I thought he was awful. And now this year he's great again. And like, meanwhile, you have probably the greatest head coach of all time losing his locker room because he just decided to make the most ridiculous decision that you'll ever see any head coach make. I'm going to run a 2 QB offense tonight. Like, really? So it's very, very fluid. It fluctuates very rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, Snail, take this if you're in 2020 and it's been years since you've even gotten past the initial round of the playoffs when you've gotten into the playoffs, And you're looking at that team, right? And let's just take a quick snapshot of that team last year through the first 4 or 5 weeks, where it's like, well, you're not onboarding this new offensive scheme. You're running out the same old tired defensive scheme, which is getting shredded across the board. When I look at your recent draft picks, be it LJ Collier or Jordan Brooks or whoever else, I'm not really seeing a good uptake in your player development. So you don't have me on the scheme, you don't have me on the player development. You seem a bit behind the ball in each of those attributes of it. So if we were sitting there looking at that time, I mean, if you were to make that assessment, would you be wrong in that moment with what you had seen through the course of maybe the first half of that year last year? I don't think you were. Maybe we got to be more patient and build in time to really be seeing where he goes through the course of the year. But I do think that it's a fair assessment to say at times, especially in recent years, like, okay, where's this going? Or are we in firm hands? I will say, Sneal, though, it's great that he's at top 5 this year, if not better than top 5. And maybe being freed up of Russell and being allowed to run this purified is a big part of that. And he'll be and being removed also at the same time of the personnel decision making, like me and Brendan just talked about, is also been a part of that. And the combination of those two things allows him to be like a great phoenix and fly once again high, you know?
Garth Knight, thank you for the $5. What is Barkley's injury history? Does he have double ACLs? It's been a trial going through the NFL for Barkley for sure, and I'm kind of amazed he's come back the way that he has. But who was the guy who played without ACLs? Was that Hines Ward or Byron Leftwich?
I didn't know there was somebody who played without ACLs. Really?
Yeah, I think Byron Leftwich was the guy who tore his ACL in college and stayed in the game, and his teammates would like carry him to the huddle, and then he
That
threw the
makes
game-winning
yeah.
touchdown.
That one sounds right. Yeah, that one sounds right. But I can't remember anybody who having like playing without it after like they just didn't ever have it reattached.
Yeah, I think Hines Ward had something weird going on with that. It might have been some kind of thing where like his ACLs just never got repaired and he played anyway. I'm not sure, but
That's strong.
yeah.
I think Barkley had an ACL in college and he's had one in the pros, I believe. But then he's also had an ankle thing happen, like I think it's a high ankle sprain or broken, dislocated like ankle too as well, I think. So he's had a couple things, strained this, pulled that as well, I think is intermixed in there a little bit.
Robbie Red, thank you for the $1.99. We need a center. Haven't had a good one since Unger. I think Justin Britt had one good year at center.
He did.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But either way, yes. Blythe is endearing himself to me enough to where I don't mind bringing him back, but I don't really want him to be the starter. There are a few decent guys in the draft who I like, and I really hope we make the investment there because this offensive line is close to being something special going forward.
I read in from the boiling article that was the peek behind the curtain in the Seahawks draft process. There was a key tidbit in that, Robbie Ray, which pointed to the Seahawks having an interest of trading back up into the first round for Lombard.
Oh, do you mean the
Linderbaum? There we go. And so I think they were intending to do this even last year or thinking about doing it. Now the cost got to be too high to make that trade up. And I am reading between the lines on that boiling article that was out there in regards to this, because I think they said they were looking to get a lineman or something at that time, I think is the way the article got put. But anyway, I think they're going to look to address it. The tackle position was a higher need for them with the way that they looked at it. And there was the right guys there to be picked at the time. In the third round, there wasn't really that center there. First, the value of Lucas, who, again, is showing his like late first round value there for that guy, where if you were going to pick him. So you had to go there, but I do think they'll address it this year. Robbie Red, I don't think it's going to be another year. It's just that they could only do so much last year with all of the needs, especially on the offensive line that they had.
Yeah, I feel pretty good that we will address center with one of our like late first or early second picks.
Me too.
Got a couple guys. I really like the Minnesota guy. He's growing on me heavily. Schmitz.
I've watched
very consistent.
Just a tiny bit on him, but I like what I've seen so far. Good and active.
Right. And Georgia has a guy, Van Pran, who I like. So there's some guys.
Yeah. There'll be a few. There's always there's not a lot, but if you're willing to get a guy, take the guy in the second round, especially where we potentially could be picking in the second round, you can usually get either the first or second best center in the entire draft.
Right. Mumbles, thank you for the $10. I didn't get to catch last stream. Did we talk about this odd front on the D line? It's split like a 4 wide receiver set with 3 lined up on the other side of the line and 1 on the opposite side on an island. So I'm trying to.
So you've got it's like the wide receiver thing is the part that's throwing me off because he's saying D line to wide receiver, so it's confusing me a little bit. I think what you're talking about is you're talking about running your three man to the strong side of the formation, and then you've got your Leo. The Leo is essentially the guy split out as the wide nine, but there's a ton of space naturally when they run a four-man front. There's always going to usually be a lot of space between the Leo to the next defensive tackle to his side. And a lot of times now they'll even have the Leo stand up like an outside linebacker at that point because he's already playing wide nine anyway. So what's the difference? He's out there, might as well stand him up as it is. And you see
Mhm.
teams do a lot of that. So I think that's what you're meeting there, Mumbles. So what you're looking to do is you move the three guys to strong side. Strong side of the formation is going to be the side that's going to technically have more guys blocking to that side, right? You'll have your tight end on the strong side. So you're moving the extra defensive lineman that side, and then you have your Leo split out. But this is why you want the Leo to be really fast and quick, because then he can cover the ground on the backside, so that if it's a backside play where they're trying to attack the numbers, he can get to the running back or get to the play, on top of also generating a pass rush if it's a pass play. So that's kind of your general setup normally in the 4-3 under, or even in a 3-4. We're still a 3-4 under defense, which still kind of has that's the 3-4 under side of it, essentially, is the built into, we're gonna stack you a strong side while leaving the weak side a little weak, as opposed to running a fully balanced line.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how these little adjustments we made to the defensive line made such a massive difference so quickly. It was like flipping a light switch.
It was. I think my opinion on this, Brendan, is that's why that two-man front was so bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at a rudimentary level as to why you apply it. I did catch the Giants, by the way, running a little bit of this sprinkled. They've sprinkled a little bit in their defense. There's still a lot of the 3-4 stuff that they do. If they do it and you're the Seahawks and you see that formation, I don't care. Run it right down their throat at that point. Attack right over the top of the guard, let him get right downhill with it and see what you can do with it. And this is not a Giants team that I want to run up the middle on. That's the place that they stop the run. You want to get more to the edges with them, but that's right where I'm attacking all day if I see that. And it's made a difference. You mentioned as well, they talked about this at the presser, I think 2 weeks ago in the Cardinal game, about allowing the defensive lineman to get a little bit more upfield. The scheme doesn't work if you're not gap and a halving, and you're not half gapping, which is more of the two gap stuff. It's gap and a halving. So the gap comes first, meaning you got to shoot the gap first before you start worrying about the backside stuff. I can't help but think with some of the two gapping passes that they have, as these guys got into that habit early on of trying to get back to the other gap or being worried about that other gap rather than really going after it. And in the last couple of weeks, I think they've really been more of in the attack mode from the defensive front.
Yeah, it's over now, so it doesn't matter. I do wonder what made them think that two-man front was ever going to work.
I don't know, Brendan. It puts the outside linebacker in such a pickle there because he's got to set the edge, but then he's got to get down to the inside of the line to protect if it comes inside, if they're attacking inside. And you're asking a guy to at that point carry on such a big duty to do that. And you don't have to. That's the problem with it. It's not really, doesn't need to occur. And if you're going to do that, Brendan, then okay, then bring blitzes, bring some stack fronts, start challenging their gap integrity a little bit more through that way. But they don't do that. They were just playing it heads up with the front four coming at it, and makes it very predictable and makes it easy for offenses to go at it when they see it, because they know we're not getting a safety coming down here to really, I'm talking attack off the line, right, Brendan? Not just merely come up with the linebackers in the box, but I'm talking shoot the gap. That's what you kind of need in those situations to really upend things. But we weren't doing that in conjunction with it. So just, I don't know. I think maybe they thought they would bring Adams up more, and then they didn't bring Adams up more, but then they still had it in there. Maybe that's what they were thinking with it.
Maybe. I can see that. I
I'm
really think
really
Adams
not
getting
sure.
hurt derailed a lot of this, unfortunately.
I do too. I think there was a lot of plans built in for him.
Yeah. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5. I love how much the Bay Boys gave up for CMC. So funny how they made their team worse while giving up so much. We'll see the end result like Carolina. Yeah, I think they play the Rams this weekend. That's kind of almost a loser leaves town match. Whoever loses is 3-5.
Jeez, things would go. Yeah, geez, that's. I thought the Rams were on a bye. They go 3-5. I thought they were just 3-4.
No. I'm saying if they lose. Oh, wait, you're right. Okay, so the Rams would go 3-4. You're right.
Because they had the bye.
Okay, so they maybe not them, but yeah, the Niners are staring a 3-game losing streak straight in the face.
They are. And look, the NFC's bad, so you can get yourself a little behind the ball and regain some of your ground as you go along. I think the Niners will be good throughout the course of this year because they do play a brand of football that's going to play better the colder it's going to get, I think, for the
Right.
most part. Even though Jimmy's arm gets, with every increasing month, he loses -5, Brendan, on his power. His power margins
Right.
go -5, and they already start out pretty low, Those that engine doesn't already rev. I am still astonished. We were live streaming at the time, Brennan, and we broke the news. It had me flabbergasted. I do remain so in regards to that trade. I know that they were, for them, were quote unquote free picks, but they stopped being free picks when you gave up all you gave up for Trey Lance, and that's not giving you the returns that you expected. That has to be viewed in light with that trade and what you're giving up, because those picks could have augmented some of the damage done there if he's not developing, if he's not going to be the quarterback for you as you move forward. And Jimmy Garoppolo is certainly going to be a free agent here into this offseason. So if they don't, unless they're trying to reback up with him, which I don't think he's going to try to do with Trey sitting looking over his shoulder,
Right.
that I don't love that move for them. And I hate when teams have a philosophy and then they suddenly pivot back off of a philosophy that's worked out pretty well for them, which is they've gotten value out of the lesser running backs in the deeper rounds. They just got weird about it in this recent time, like cutting Trey Sermon as quickly as they did on that one. Not adding enough bodies in there when they know that it was going to be a position that was going to get broken down and they were going to need extra guys for. That was where their issue came into play. But pivoting off and now suddenly overvaluing the position from going to undervaluing it was a very strange turn of events for that 49er team.
Yeah, the free pick argument is so stupid. Like,
Yeah.
so because you have extra picks from something, you should give away your other picks. So it's like you don't have the free picks at all because you get like okay, we have 2 firsts and 2 seconds next year. Should we trade one of them for Kevin White from the Bears or something?
Oh,
Or
it's
wherever he is?
I had a Bronco fan put his comments in my chat on one of my videos about it. We actually win this trade because we weren't going to do anything with those first round picks anyway. Okay. It's like a defeatist attitude, and it's the same thing. If you're in go for, you never value your picks. Like, it's like, okay, it's kind of coming from the same place as far as an ideology is concerned.
Yeah,
And
if that's how you feel, why are you even a fan of that team anymore? If you don't believe they'll ever do anything good in the draft, it's like, how do you stomach being a fan of them? Like, if you're gonna basically admit defeat before anything happens, like I don't get that at all.
they're
Like y'all,
getting pretty depressed out there in the Rocky Mountains right now, Brandon. I can lie. I've seen them in my comment section. A lot of these folks need a session on the couch right now. You know what I mean?
right? Okay. Mumbles, thank you for the $5. Also, that orange cat is trying so hard to get your attention, Brando. I noticed.
Yeah, she's when she's got it in her mind, she needs attention. There's not a whole lot I can do. She turns into like a dog. She'd alien face hug me if she could.
Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $20. Big one. Another one,
Woo!
actually. I think you've
Let's
given
go,
a couple
Mark.
already. There's a couple of teams in history that are the same as these and started out 6-1. 76 Raiders, 82 Washington, 03 Panthers. They all went to the Super Bowl. Do you guys think they have history on their side? Oakland and Washington won. Well, sometimes it works out, but sometimes it doesn't. I remember the 09 Broncos with Josh McDaniels, rookie head coach. They started 6-0 and then ended up going 8-8 and missing the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that same year the Giants started 5-0, ended up going 8-8 and missed the playoffs, if I recall. Maybe 9-7, but they missed.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. All I can do is look at that team and, as of right now, assess that, yeah, they're a decent team. They're doing some things well, especially on defense, which we'll get to in a minute here. But I don't believe they're a team that's going to be at the top of the conference when the season ends.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think so either. I like those comps. I was thinking about those through. I especially like the 76 Raider comp to the Seahawks. Team speed, quarterback that had been thrown on the trash heap that everybody said was done. That one's a really good comp there. Washington had Riggins at the end of his career, and they were able to pull that out with Heisman the Theismann. And then 03, of course, with Jake Delhomme and Steve Smith running like the Flash at that time. He was so fast. So
Julius Peppers, one of my favorite players ever.
Julius Peppers, they had that front four. They had a really solid front four there in Carolina in 03 at that time too. A bunch of guys that could get after it. So I do like the comparisons. And yeah, I mean, if you start out at 6-1, you set yourself on the right path to getting there. But as Brendan said, there's a lot of ones that do fall off. We've seen, I think, the Cardinals, this has happened to in recent years at times. I don't know if they got to 6-1, but something near to that mark as well. It doesn't necessarily guarantee success. It doesn't. And I think more than ever now, a 6-1 start's got to be looked at in the perspective of understanding this is where that 17th game of the season also factors in, because it's one extra game. It's one little bit more point that puts it into more of a sample size. Rather than being halfway through the season at this point, you're at like 37% through the season, with that extra kind of game in the spot. So we'll see. We'll see on them. I don't think that the Giants got anything near enough to keep this continuing to keep going. And Brendan's initial point on this about them having to really walk the razor's edge here in these wins, where one ball bounces here, one call goes this way, 1 yard they gain in a particular game is the difference between a win and a loss. You play that close, you're gonna eventually get bit by it. And our Seahawks aren't really doing that in the same run. We've had some close games, but we've also had, like last week, where you're up in the Cardinals game the previous week, where you're up pretty good in that fourth quarter. So we're not necessarily playing the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't so much close games. This is just like the game. In a couple of these games, it's like the game is over, and then the other team just decides, you know what? Let's make this more exciting. Like, I think the Titans pretty much had that game won, and then Tannehill threw some terrible interception. Same with the Ravens. Ravens had that game won, and Lamar just does whatever the heck that was, and they lose. And most games in the NFL are close. I don't knock teams for playing close games.
No.
But I do look at some of this and go, you're really benefiting of the kindness of your opponent here a little bit.
Well, when you lean into it as the sole thing, and that's my little bit of issue at times in recent years with Carroll and leaning into this philosophy, right? This is the run, pass approach that we applied for so many years, where it was all about just taking the time of possession, protecting the defense, not turning it over, not ever doing. And look, it's a boring style of play, but it can be an effective style of play when that ball does bounce your way and you get the calls and you get the things working in your favor. So that's where it can help you. I do think I was looking at, remember there was a stat I posted a few weeks ago about the teams getting the best calls or getting the benefit from the best calls in the league. I think the Giants were top 3 in the beneficials from the calls that they've received so far early on this season, which has helped them as well on that track. But I don't think it's something that's as I say, I think that you're going to continue to get that luck. It's like, you've rolled the dice and gotten a couple of, 7s. I don't think now on your 4th dice roll, it's if you're leaning on that being the way you're getting your money, versus playing some poker and actually reading faces, or at least trying to do something that has some strategy to it. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to last for them this year. I don't think that they're going to be a playoff team when this is all said and done this year.
Yeah, in that division, it's not going to be easy. And by the way, they haven't played the Eagles yet. They play the Cowboys still, and the Cowboys already beat them with Cooper Rush. Mm-hmm. And actually, let me take a look here real quick. Yeah, they've got those games. They got the Vikings. Their remaining schedule isn't terrible, but those I don't see how they beat a team like the Eagles. I don't. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. I mean, and they've got some easy. Maybe they do get in as I look at. They got Lions, Texans, Commanders twice, and the Colts. So Sam Ellinger's been named quarterback now for the Colts for the rest of the year, so they may get in there because their schedule is just so weak. But I wouldn't consider them a true blue playoff team. I normally would. They like the Vikings to me are a much tougher team. Who's another team that I'd look at and say, I don't know. They just don't strike me. I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating them. I'm probably underselling them.
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think by a lot. By the way, Matt Ryan, do you think he got benched or do you think he's hurt? What happened?
No, I think he's done. He's just done. The skills have gone out the door. Yeah. I mean, it's just that game in Mile High, Brendan, where it was painful and you could just see he's just, I don't have an explanation for it because he was fairly decent last year, but it's a cliff right now.
Yeah. I feel like the story changes every day. One day they say, oh no, he's injured. And then they say, oh, he got benched. And then he comes out and talks about like, it's really humbling to be benched. And I'm like, okay, did you get benched or are you hurt?
Yeah. Frank Reich's trying to keep his job. And right now they're still as bad as the year, not bad, but as has been kind of subpar year there for the Colts so far. You could look at the quarterback position and say, this is holding us back right now. There's not necessarily hope that it's not going to hold us back going forward. So let's try something else that we can apply here. I think that Hackett was doing a little bit of this last week with holding Russ out, because I know Russ would have wanted to play last week, but he's like, my job's on the line here. This isn't working right now at all. Let me try to see if this can kickstart something here. Maybe it's desperate, but yeah, it's desperate times, desperate measures.
Absolutely. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5. By the way, as big a loser as RW3 looks to the media, he was never, I think that's Cutler as in Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
He's kind of the anti-Cutler, right?
Yeah, nobody would say, yeah, anti-color is a great way to put it. No one would ever say Russell doesn't care. Does he care always about the right stuff and the proper things and ignoring other things? I don't know on that, but yeah, he's taken. He's. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's the high knees thing in the aisle. Like I got.
Yeah, he cares, but he wants everybody to know how much he cares or
He
something.
does. It's just it's tough. He's trying as hard as he can, I think, to try to not dig himself further. But everything that kind of comes up, be it a commercial or a sound bite, it's just one more shovel stroke into the dirt.
Yeah, yeah, I was watching the PFT video about the Wilson high knees thing. It was Chris Sims and Mike Florio both just dunking on him for like 8 minutes or something because it's just one of those things where the implication is like, oh yeah, everyone else was asleep, but I was still working.
Shannon Sharp had some introduce his comments on this
No,
too.
I did not. Not at
I
all.
would go watch that one as well because the key with that one and watching it is understanding Shannon's connected to that organization, and he lets through a few tidbits about the fact that number one, there's people in the locker room getting fed up with it. Number two, that he mentions ownership wanting to win and they're not happy with what they're seeing. And again, you could just see him. He's speaking basically like a mouthpiece a little bit as the ownership. I feel like in that moment that I don't know if he's been allowed to be saying that, but he was saying some things that were a little bit like, ooh, this is Shannon. You're kind of giving you are speaking some things that usually be a little more tight. And you could see him trying to like parse his words very carefully, but yet still say the same thing. And he starts, he's like, it's definitely, he is out on the Russ experience in that respect of things. And he was talking about, he's like, yeah, John Elway didn't have his own office. Peyton Manning didn't have his own office, what? Yeah. And I think, the honeymoon's definitely over in Denver. Let's just say that.
Yeah. He hasn't done anything for them yet. It's not like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers isn't playing good right now, but Rodgers has done a ton for Green Bay. They
No.
might be a little more willing to give him time and let things slide, but not this. No, not at all.
But you're right, Garth. He's not Jay Cutler, and Jay Cutler would have been much, as much as the cringe, like corny stuff came back. Like I wouldn't want Cutler as a quarterback with that face that doesn't care about anything, and it's like he looked like he's a. Do I have to play today? Really? All right.
Yeah, I read once that he had the look on his face the perpetual look on his face was like a trust fund kid who just got his Escalade back from the valet and found a scratch on it.
Totally. That's exactly what it was. I mean, he's got that just lack of. I wouldn't want that. I'd much rather take a Russell Wilson every day over that every day and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, by the way, I'm waking up at 6 on Sunday to stream that Jaguars Broncos games. We got to watch.
Yes.
Is it going to die or is it going to get some life support?
I know. Hey, it's a big game. Like we know about this. This is probably going to be at least 2 trades are going to be jumped off the back of this a loss if it happens, which means the team just goes if it does go that direction. So, this will be a very key week for the Seahawks team as far as, or not, actually, but Bronco team as far as where they go. And that, of course, impacts us. We talk about this because this is so impactful to our team. A Bronco team going 3 or 4 wins this year and the type of player that we're able to bring in, that is going to generate an excitement in this fan base that is valid, very valid.
Would you do a 3rd rounder for Dalton Risner?
Isn't that remind me of the position again on here?
Left guard.
Left guard.
I mean, he's pretty good. Last year of his rookie deal, 2nd rounder, young. He weighs like 310, so he could probably play in Waldron's scheme. He's not like one of these huge guards that can't move.
Probably not, because I think any offensive lineman you bring right now is not going to have the continuity or the time for continuity to really have the effect in a midseason trade. Think back to midseason deals and trade deadline deals. How often do we see an offensive lineman moved at the trade deadline who's able to come in and provide any kind of help or even that kind of trade that is made?
Okay, that's a good point. Would you, if they can't trade him and he becomes a free agent at the end of the year, that's definitely somebody I would look at, by the way.
I'd look at him. I would want to look at the main thing I'd want to double check on is, like, for instance, combine scores, where he was at from an explosive standpoint and movement standpoint in short areas, especially because that's the point that's been missing right now with our current guards is a little bit of that immobility. And so you can't attack as much out on the edges. Like this game, for instance, the Giants defensively and what they do, you notice that they're one of the worst teams out there in stopping the run in the league. We're like the worst, but they're like 2 spots behind us.
Right.
Watching them on the tape, though, everything gets clogged up tight in the middle. So you've got to hit them to the edges. But of course, that's one of the things with our guards that isn't always the greatest is that we don't have the mobility. So if he may be good, but does he have that mobility to get out to that side like we're going to need with these guys going forward? It's a little bit of why I think Blythe, even though he's not been like highly rated by PFF, but he's been so outstanding here on this line, it's because he's such a purified scheme fit to what we need and want from the center position.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Okay, you kind of talked me out of it here. I was thinking about it, but you kind of talked me out of it. Voodoo Magic, thank you for the $1.99. Are the Vikings legit or pretenders? I can't get that week 2 game against Philly out of my head where Kirk Cousins literally looked like Nathan Peterman. But, I mean, they're certainly good. I just don't think they're Super Bowl good.
Yeah, I don't think they're Super Bowl good. I think they're kind of Viking teams they've been in the past where they're playoff good. They'll be a little bit different in the way they put things together this year as far as being more offensively driven. I think that they'll be defensively driven. I also still think Kirk Cousins just the guy you can't count on to not make the mistake at the wrong time, at the big time. Maybe that's being I'm labeling him off too far of deep past performance in the past, and somebody could flash me a stat where in primetime games he suddenly has come alive recently. I just haven't seen. Every time I watch him primetime, I'm coming away unimpressed with him. He did beat the hell out of us last year in Minnesota. I mean, he threw the ball all over the place, and they've got right now that kid Jefferson running the Cooper Kupp role in that offense, and he's taken to it like a duck to water. So you can't deny that. And so they've got a lot of stuff that's. They got a good offensive line, good receivers on the edge. Cook, if he's healthy, is one of the better backs in the league. Even the tight end, they're pretty good with Irv Smith there. He's all right. Defensively, though, I don't know if I trust him. But then again, Brennan, you can't deny it. You got Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter now healthy and back where he wasn't there last year. Those two guys coming off the end. That's two of the more ferocious edge guys that you have coming. So you have an offense that could score and two edge guys that can come after you to press it. This is what the Broncos were trying to do this offseason with their signings, right? With Gregory and DJ Jones and then Nick Bonito, right? And they knew they had Chubb coming back as they were we're going to get up on teams. We're going to score a ton of points with Russell. And then these edge guys will come down and close it up. Seal it down, put the nail through the coffin. And the Vikings do have that ability to do that with those guys coming off the edge like they do.
Yeah. They don't still have Patrick Peterson over there, do they?
Yeah, he's still there.
Oh, really? Okay. Still kicking. All right, good for him.
He's hanging in there. He's old. He looks old out there. I was watching the game for the I think the Falcons played him, so I was watching him when their Falcons were playing him. So he's losing as many as he's winning. Let's just say that out there, but he's playing.
Oh, by the way, off topic here, there was an announcement a minute ago. It is believed that Shaq Barrett tore his ACL or his Achilles, excuse me.
Ooh, God, that's the brutal one. That's the real one that just kills you.
Yeah, they're just throwing that one out there. That's a big loss.
That's a big loss. They already were down JPP, already down Ndamukong Suh from this offseason. You're down him, Justin Tyron. I know you're a dog, man, but I mean, he hasn't exactly come forward from the player that many thought he might kind of be coming out. Not yet, at least. So that definitely puts a pass rush in peril for them a little bit moving forward on this season. On top of the fact they're not looking good across the board anyway.
Yeah, you think Brady retires midseason? You think that's on the table?
She's giving him the ultimatum. And he's like, he's really not going to, he's really has fallen out of love with Giselle at that point. If he's looking at this team right now going, this is a Super Bowl contending squad right now, I could get there this year. If he's looking at this right now going, that's the case, then you never loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Parcells did this. He lost his marriage when he came back to football to coach the Cowboys. He got a divorce after that because he loved football so much he was willing to give up his marriage for it. But Brady's come back and it's like, I don't think you're really into this, dude. I don't know what you're here for.
I don't know how he looks at the team and goes, well, this I'll get this team back. If he did, it would be the greatest story to pull this team with this squad with where they're at. But there's no Gronk there. He had his offensive lineman retire this offseason, probably their best offensive lineman, Ali Marpet. Jensen's out for the year. I don't know where Worst is at as a health standpoint, but he's been in and out of the lineup as well on that side. Then you look at defensively, like we talked about, they're down some guys over there. I think Antoine Winfield's out right now for them as well in the secondary. So where's for their standpoint and Mount Brady's standpoint, like this is not the well-oiled machine it was a couple of years ago when we were really humming. It's falling backwards quicker and quicker. And if my marriage is at stake, I'm not going to tell a man what to do with, but like if you do want to hold together, like this would be the time to make that move. And I don't think anybody can begrudge you. Like I had to retire so that I could stay with Giselle. Like, is anybody really going to, hold him over some crazy barrel or allow that to really tarnish his legacy if that was the choice that he made?
Tampa Bay fans might be a little salty because he kind of derailed their season.
I gave him a Super Bowl though, man. Like I gotta say,
Yeah.
Brady comes in. If I bring a legendary quarterback in, it's like the Manning thing. If I bring you in and in 3-year period and bringing you in, you go get me a Super Bowl. Job mission accomplished, sir. Mission accomplished. I'll pay that piper.
Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $5. I heard the Bears drafted Trubisky because he drove a hoop tie. I heard this story.
Hoopty.
I have, yeah, hoopty. Sorry, not familiar with that terminology. As bad as our drafts have been, I'm really glad we don't use that philosophy. I have heard this story. I think it's true. My best
What?
friend is a Bears fan. He talks about
Oh my
this.
God! Please tell me now. Tell me the story. I haven't heard it.
Basically, it's because he was driving a car that was so like cheap and, um, uh, cheap and like just functional. They thought he was like a hardworking lunch pail guy,
Okay.
and they looked at that, and apparently they read something into that. It makes me think of that scene in Moneyball when all the old
Yeah.
guys are sitting around talking about a player, like his girlfriend and stuff, like trying
Yeah.
to determine what kind of player he is because of how he looks,
Yeah.
stuff
He's
like
got a
that.
strong jaw. He's got a strong jaw. Good quarterbacks always have a strong jaw. It's known.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And that scene does still strike out when you think about these moments. I regularly am blown away, Brendan, and it's part of the reason why we do what we do in the draft season to really look in depth on these guys, because such silly things can get these guys knocked that goes outside of how good they are and how well they play the position. And you would not think that that would be the case, but indeed, there's a lot of silly franchises out of there, and there's a lot of idiocracy out there, and it's way more than you probably would think as a fan that exists across the board in the NFL. And that's just one of the real shining examples of that. They traded multiple first round picks to go get a hoopty guy. That's
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah. My first car was a 1991 Mercury Topaz that had the automatic seat belts that would like roll into place when you turned the car on.
Oh, I I
Like,
have
like,
I got you beat. I a 1984 Nissan Pulsar that was a bigger lemon than what Russell's been for the Denver so far. I mean,
yeah,
you put your foot down on the gas and it would take a delayed 3 seconds to finally kick in.
yeah. My mom called my car the torture chamber.
Yeah. Oh, mine was too.
So, are the Bears going to draft me? Is that's what I'm trying to
Well,
get at here? Can the Bears
It,
draft me?
I would say that, but puts you up higher on their list than you would be otherwise. So
Mhm,
you got a couple of extra bonus points for it in that respect.
mhm. Fat Daddy Stacks, thank you for the $10. A few minutes behind, seen a tweet after the Broncos game that said Russell Wilson wasted Pete Carroll's prime. Thought that it was funny. Yeah, that one's been making the rounds.
It
That's
has.
a funny one.
It is funny.
Um, I don't want to go too far with things. I think it's important to realize that the Wilson we're seeing this year in Denver is not the Russ that we had here before, even last year. Like last year, I didn't like the way Wilson was playing, but he wasn't like this. This is something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of think he's a little bit better maybe last year, probably before the finger injury. I think post finger injury he's been pretty close to what he's been right now. I think he also at the end of the year, remember Brendan, we got a bunch of kind of weaker opponents at the end. So you got Detroit, you got Houston, you got Chicago. There were those teams that were really in the can at that point, and especially defensively, were covered some things up for Russ. He's lost some talent on that side of the ball too, which has made him look a little worse than what he had here, especially at the receiver position from
Right.
what he had in prior years. But yeah, I don't think that I'm not a guy he wasted. I think people would say it in jest. I think that everything in this situation is tremendously complicated in the Wilson Carroll dynamic in the history of it and how I'll they do a video documentary on this, Brendan, breaking the whole situation down from start to finish. It's not a story that can be told with one sentence, nor just simply with a quick thought. It's not a simplistic one of one guy's evil and one guy's the hero. This is one where there's a lot of shades of gray and a lot of different parts of it that go in different ways. And certain guys are certain ways in years, other ways in certain years, and other guys are other ways in other years in this whole dynamic of things. But it's a complicated one, man.
I mean, this year he can't even score points. He played the Chargers defense; they're terrible, and he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't score. He played the Texans and couldn't score. So he's not even scoring on bad defenses this year. So
It's true.
I mean, look, what he's doing now is a logical progression from what he was doing in previous years in terms of his shortcomings taking over his game. But the Wilson that we had has very little in common with the Wilson that we see right now in Denver. I
I
I
agree.
don't want everyone to start thinking that
No,
oh he was
100%.
always bad.
100%. No, he was not. He was not this for the vast majority of the time as the Seattle Seahawks. This was not anywhere close in the vicinity of where Russell Wilson played for us. And he had times for a 3-year period where he was a legit top 3 quarterback, I think, in the sport. I do think he was at that level for a good couple of years time frame, but
Mhm.
that was a couple of years ago.
Power hitter, thank you for the 4.99. Opinions on Josh Allen, Jags defensive end on the trading block. Do you see him as a guy that could come to Seattle? Well, he's a good player. If he
Mm-hmm.
is on the trade block, I would definitely make a phone call. But I am guessing Jacksonville's going to want some pretty serious compensation after looking at what the Panthers are supposedly turning down for Brian Burns. So I'm going to say it's going to be too much.
Yeah, my thought process on this is going to be too much too. He's been good for a couple of years now. He's having another outstanding year right now. It's kind of surprising, quite frankly. I'm a little suspicious that Jacksonville is not signing him to a contract extension. This is a team that every year has more money to spend than they know what to do with. So they have to overpay for guys like Christian Kirk and give him $100 million. You're not going to give this defensive end who's been very productive for you since you drafted him a contract extension. I'm a little bit wondering why on that situation there with them. I know that they're a little bit maybe more in the rebuild road, but that's a little bit odd to me. I think the cost on this is going to be too exorbitant as well. Your baseline here, I think, at the end of the day, is your minimum is your Frank Clark trade. I think teams are going to use that legitimately as a benchmark, as a minimum here for these kind of pass rushers who are entering into a similar situation. First, second round pick. I don't want to give any. If I'm giving a first or second round pick at this point for a defensive end, his name better be Myles Garrett. I'm not
Mhm.
doing it for a guy that's good but not great. You better be giving me great for a first and second round pick.
I pretty much agree. And that I would even say that kind of includes like Brian Burns. I was interested in swooping in if they were going to sell low for like maybe a second round pick, but
Yeah,
that's about it. Like, and even
100
that makes me uncomfortable.
100%, man. 100%. I like Burns. I like Josh Allen. I don't buy Josh Allen. I don't drive by Brian Burns being in that same area of a guy like Myles Garrett or TJ Watt when he's healthy. I don't think that's at the same level. I don't. And I think when one guy's here or one guy's up here. And there's few guys that are up in this rarefied air that I'd be willing to do it. And if they're not, don't go make that trade. Look at the Chiefs, for instance, with that Frank Clark deal. You don't think there's some buyer's remorse? I know he's still there, but he's not been tremendously productive for them outside of at times being very good in the playoffs in certain moments.
Yeah.
And I think they have definite, we probably wouldn't have done that deal again if we look back on it in retrospect. So
Hmm.
I think let's learn from the lessons of somebody else's mistakes on this one.
Hmm. Jesse Lund, thank you for the $2. How similar is Kenny Pickett to Geno? Kind of a weird comparison here. I'm not sure if I'm seeing too much parallel here.
Geno's got 3 times the hand size of Kenny Pickett. So right there, we've got that blows baby hands out of the water right there. None really to me. Geno Smith's got a good arm. He's not a guy with a powerful arm, but he's got a good NFL arm. Kenny Pickett's got a average arm that's going to require a lot of anticipation. He can move in the pocket with mobility standpoint. Maybe they're somewhat close. I don't think Kenny Pickett's hitting 19 miles per hour in the open field like Geno did a couple of weeks ago in that Cardinals game. I don't think
Right.
he gets to 15 miles per hour. So, I mean, I, I like Geno Smith better as a player than Kenny Pickett. I didn't think Kenny Pickett should have been taken in the first round. I think none of the quarterbacks taken this last draft have shown you that they should have been picked anywhere versus where they were. The third rounder guys that were taken a third rounder, and I think our assessment on those guys, Brendan, have proven out to be true so far. And Kenny Pickett has been accurate. So that's the one thing that stood out with him. I know he's got the interceptions, but he's at least been relatively right place with the ball, but he just doesn't have the same, to me, free and easy release, doesn't have the arm strength. I was looking at Brendan, it was kind of blowing me away. I thought with Geno this year, we're going to get a little bit more of the short and intermediate stuff. Have you seen his pass chart, the heat chart lately with Geno Smith? It's it's it's
It's a little
it's
more extreme than I thought.
yeah, you go, gosh, this looks almost similar to like the Russ stuff where it's just red deep middle, red deep left, red deep on the out routes, red deep to the left out routes, and then it's all gray in the short, like flat route type
Yeah.
throws.
And
So
that's with the first two games. There was none of that deep stuff. So
yeah, I
crazy.
know. I know it's kind of insane. So yeah, I don't see any Pickett would be a very, 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 very rough Geno would not be the first. He wouldn't be within probably the first 30 quarterbacks. I'd probably go to my mind for a Kenny Pickett comparison. Just kind of two different guys, I think.
The Snail, thank you for the $5. Smoking Jay Cuddy, 4x MVP, 2x SB MVP, if he had a life coach and nano bubbles because he saw the middle of the field. I mean, he had the arm.
Look, yeah, he had the arm. Like Brennan said, you can't teach, and not just arm as far as arm strength, but an arm and ability to make any throw on the football field that you needed required. Jay Cutler could make it. He was mobile enough in the pocket too. He wasn't a complete statue. He could move around. He just didn't care to do so. He'd rather sit there and smoke a cigarette. No, but he's just, that's, if he had cared and had that in it, yeah, that's why he was taken, I think, in the top 10 in that draft, if not top 12, I believe, in that particular draft out of Vanderbilt, is that, he had that talent to be that guy. And he had the smarts too. Guy was a smart guy. Just, it's the drive, the want to be great, the will to be great. You can have the smarts and the physical ability, but you need that final extra part to bring it all together.
Right. I agree. I remember the Jay Cutler stuff because he was, in my lifetime, the first quarterback I remember. He was like the guy who rocketed up draft boards just because people needed another quarterback to talk about, because that was the Matt Leinart, Vince Young year. And every couple years you get that quarterback who nobody talks about. And then in the last couple months, suddenly everyone's talking about them. Like Tannehill was like that. I think Blaine Gabbert was kind of like that. Blake Bortles might have been like that too. Every couple years. Yeah. It's like, why is this guy here? Because they needed one more quarterback to be in the top.
Yeah. And people start, I think some of these NFL evaluators really start to stretch on the projection stuff, because you go big arm, good mobility. Oh, and he's a bright kid that goes to Vanderbilt. He'll eventually be able to learn the sport and process and do all that stuff. And then he'll have the arm to go with it. And it's like, yeah, but then what about the drive? What about the love of the game? What about being a leader? And they start getting more caught up on those other concepts, where those other things do matter, especially for the quarterback position. Maybe more so for the quarterback position than other positions.
Mr. Kane, thank you for the $2. Just
My
sending
brother from
love.
another
You
mother.
guys rock. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Good to see you in the house, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Kane. Thank you so much, man.
And James Upat, thank you for the $2. Should John try to get Bobby Wagner back? No.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. And John was at the forefront of this, I think, with the cutting of Bobby. As I think that's where Carroll didn't get informed of it. I think they'd had a lot of discussions back and forth. This is again part of the proof me and Brendan kind of fall back on as to why Carroll got some of the personnel stuff pulled from him, because I think Carroll wanted to keep Bobby here. But then I think that Schneider was able to override him in this given case. And that's why the whole lack of communication happened with Bobby Wagner when he was shown the door. But I think this is John driving that forward. I think he would he would pull the Roquan Smith. It was a matter of having to face the barrel of getting Bobby. No, and the Rams aren't going to try to trade him. The Rams are in go for mode. The Rams could be one win right now in the season, and they would still be in go for mode right now because of all the assets that they put in place into the future.
Yeah, they're on the road. There's no getting off the road.
No, we're getting off the road. They've got like bumpers on the side, James, where the Rams are going to have to stay on this one and ride it, even if the top rips off, the windows break. They have no choice with the decisions they've made on this one. It's a one-way trip, Brendan.
Okay, so let's talk about the Giants defense here real quick. This is the side of the ball that's actually doing really well. They're 6th in points allowed. And you look at their players, it doesn't look like an amazing defense. Dexter Lawrence has been a really good nose tackle. Leonard Williams, Big Cat, has been really good for them as well. Other than that, they have a couple guys who have been okay so far, but it's not great. Their linebacker play in particular has been kind of weak. Crowder is the worst linebacker in the league, according to PFF. In a league where Cody Barton is playing significant snaps, he is the worst linebacker in the league, according to PFF. And I'm not seeing how they're doing it. I got to give a lot of credit to Wink Martindale. He's cooking up some crazy stuff over there, and it's working really well. So what do you think about this Giants defense?
Well, you mentioned Wink is really, to me, beyond any of the players on this field. It's Wink Martindale that is the guy that I really have a lot of respect for and really more fear from this defense than anything else. He'll run more blitzes at you than any other team in football. He'll run them from every different angle. He'll run them as exotically as any coach in the league. He coaches defense how every fan would want their team to coach defense, which is balls out and without any fear at all. None. Now in Baltimore, he had a lot of good players over there that could execute his defense like that to get away with that at times. They were always able to put a good personnel over there. Maybe not as good over here in the Giants, but he's getting the returns out of it early on. What stood out to me in watching them, Brendan, is that they're not necessarily a fast team, but they're physical and they're strong at the point of attack. I don't think you're going to get anywhere by hammering this ball up inside, especially over A gap type runs. They've got too many guys in there that are going to handle you there on that, and they're going to do a good job of clogging that up just naturally with how many guys they're going to put up around the line of scrimmage. So this is going to open us back up to a little bit more of the big plays down the football field potentially for Geno in the way that the people run their coverages against us in this one. I don't see them running, like, let's say, Brendan, a lot of cover two, let's say. I think you're going to get some single high looks at times. They do a good job at also kind of counterbalancing the blitz stuff with running at times some very safe coverages. So they get you kind of tricked into thinking, okay, we've got them here coming up the blitz, and then they fall out of it, and you're now facing something with a lot of depth, and you're now have to come back underneath as a quarterback and sort of change on the fly versus what you saw pre-snap. Just once again, Brendan, why I think Wink is such a smart defensive coordinator when he wants to run. It's not just being the one speed. It's how he applies it kind of across the board. Really like what he does there. But no, there's nobody personnel-wise that's going to scare you. Of course, Jeremy Bradbury, they're one of their better corners. They let go at the start of the year. They've had a couple guys go through like that in recent time there from that secondary especially. So there's nobody out there that's necessarily going to freak you out as far as being able to shut down a receiver or whatnot. But they're solid against the run. You got to hit to the outside, though, Brennan. Pitch plays to Kenneth Walker all day in this one. Fly sweeps to D. Eskridge in this one. I would love to see a nice just good run of those kind of plays in this game, because I think you're going to have some effect. It was like watching the Cowboy game where you're watching Ezekiel Elliott just hammering up the middle over and over to nowhere, play after play against that Giants team. And then they bring that backup kid in and they start working him to the edges, and there's all these holes and big plays to be had when they get out to the edges. I don't think they've got our speed. I don't think they're fast enough to stay with us and our running backs and guys like Goodwin that we got on the field that we can throw.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it. They've allowed about 5.7 yards per carry this year.
Yeah.
So you can run on them. I agree, maybe you don't want to be pounding it up the middle all the time, but you can definitely run on this team. They have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL through 7 games. So it seems like every year there's a team that can't stop the run at all, but still is really good. Like, remember the Packers in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
No ability to stop the run, but they went 13-3, made the NFC title game, and then Jimmy G just got turned into a handoff machine.
Yeah.
And they couldn't stop it. It kind of feels like the Giants might be like that. And it does go to show you that there are multiple ways to have success in the NFL. You can be a defense that is terrible against the run, but still be a good defense. Old philosophies would tell you that, no, you have to stop the run first.
Yes. And I do think stopping the run still does matter. I think, for instance, that Packer team, one of the reasons they got away with this, and one of the reasons a lot of teams can still get away with it sometimes being bad on an average per attempt, yet they don't get a lot of yards in total run on them, as you have offenses, of course, putting those teams up in those football games and then getting up by 2-3 touchdowns. And then it becomes really about the opposition not being able to run the ball because they're trying to come from behind and they don't want to run down the clock. I think that the key difference with this Giants team, though, versus that Green Bay team that you mentioned, so this Giants team is trying to run the ball on the other side of it. It's not that they're getting up on opponents. What they're doing is they're running, and then their opponents are running, and the game's going like this from 60 minutes to down to this really quickly. You get like 6 possessions in a game, and it's like, oh, it's over with. And so that's happening more on this front of it versus that other side of it, which I think would normally be the case where if you have a bad team bad against the run, but they're good, it's because they have a prolific offense that's able to throw the ball over the football field. And maybe they have a defense that's really good in getting after the quarterback, which is, again, the Giants don't necessarily get after the quarterback as far as pass rush goes to any great degree either. So I think that's where this one's different. And again, part of the reason why, Brendan, I don't put as much, maybe I should on this one. I might be eating some crow next week, but I don't put as much fear into this game with where I look at the Giants because of that, where I go, this is a little bit of the non-sustainable aspect of things with you allowing the running game, where at the same time, your offense isn't necessarily that great. If we can get up on them in this game, they're in trouble, Brendan. You can, and this is what the Seahawks have done the last couple of weeks, which is if bam, you get out of the gate, put up points, bam, last week up 17-0. This is not a Giants team that's built to play from behind. And if they can do that, that would be very beneficial to us getting the W in this one.
Yeah, then you can bust out your 2-man fronts if you know they're not going to run the ball because they're down so much. So
yeah,
that helps.
One question I have for you, Brendan, is as you mentioned last show when we talked about this, One of your moments that highly frustrated you about Coach Carroll was the time when he had the post-game presser against Buffalo, and he said, "Yeah, we just thought they were going to run the ball all day today against the worst rushing team in the sport." So
Yeah.
now he's faced back up against Brian Daboll again. What do you see as the punch counter punch on this one, as far as Carroll coming into this game understand? Because Carroll's thinking about that last time Daboll had him and how he worked
Yeah.
his defense. So
I mean, this isn't really a team that can throw the ball all over the place, right? Even if they
mhm.
wanted to. So, I mean, I think you got to put 8 in the box and live with it.
Yep. I agree, man. You got it. There ain't no Stephon Diggs on that outside in this team, like and Josh Allen. Daniel Jones is no Josh Allen. Not,
Right.
maybe he can run somewhat similar to Josh Allen, but he don't got that same arm or that ability to make those kind of throws.
All right. Yeah, so there one injury they have on defense right now is, I believe his name is Aziz Ojulari.
Ojolari. Yeah.
Yeah, he's their second edge rusher along with Thibodeau.
Mm-hmm.
He's, I believe, going to miss this game, so that takes a big bite out of their pass rush. So they're going to depend heavily on the blitz, I assume. And looking at their corners, Adoree Jackson's been okay. They've got Fabian Maru, I believe, formerly of the Raiders. He's been okay, but I don't know. I'm looking at this defense and I'm trying to figure out, how are they sixth? How are they an elite defense with this many obvious holes? Like Crowder, Xavier McKinney's been pretty mediocre so far. Apparently, my understanding is Love's been pretty good. I think his name is Julian Love. And I don't know how they're doing it. So big ups to Wink Martindale is, I guess, what I'm trying to say here. But I look at this defense, especially with Geno's ability so far this year to read a defense pre-snap and make the necessary adjustments. I kind of look at a defense that we can do some things against.
Well, I've got an answer for your question on that one. Okay. Let me bring these names up to you. Titans, Panthers, Cowboys without Dak Prescott, Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers this year, Ravens, Jaguars. Which of those teams is a prolific offense?
Yeah, that is it. I mean, that's really what you would say, right? Like, the Titans offense is okay. Ravens offense is okay. Yeah, I mean, the opposition matters, but even still, they're playing better than I would have expected.
They're definitely better, way better. I thought they would be a league worst team playing for that first pick. So they are phenomenally beyond where I thought they were going to be at the start of the year. Absolutely. No doubt about that. But for me, as I say, as a common theme for me is about sustainability when I look at this team with the Giants. And I look at that, I look at the schedule. We look at how close the games were, the way they're winning, the talent they have on both sides of the ball as it stands right now. And I do think they're getting the most out of their players. They're getting every last drop of bit of talent and ability that's out there. But like Adoree Jackson, for instance, I mean, if you got him out on the outside playing outside corner, that guy's a slot corner. I've scouted that kid since back in his days in USC. He's not an outside guy. He's an inside guy. That's what he played for the Titans when he was playing for them. But I'm guessing that they're probably playing him on the outside. And why are they doing that? Because
so.
they cut. Why they do that? Because they cut Bradbury. It's like we get to these decisions teams make that aren't built upon, oh, the guy's got such ability to be out there and be so good. We get to these decisions that are made because you cut this A player you want to get out from under the contract on because you'd spend some money on, and you're like, nah, not worth it. But you create a hole, didn't have a real keen opening there, and then just kind of fit something in.
Right. So what I'm trying to say here is that obviously this Giants defense is doing something right, but I'm feeling pretty good. I think we can run on them. Of course, everybody runs on them, but I'm also thinking, if Geno's up to the task of figuring out that defense pre-snap, we're going to be able to put up enough points to put this game away.
One of the greatest things Geno Smith's been able to do, to your point on this season, has been able to recognize the blitz. And Waldron's doing a very good job of giving him a lot of time on the play clock to get up to the line of scrimmage and make his assessment about what's going on. That's a big key part of this because he can get up there, really look things over and assess, and he's on it. He's smart with it. How many times, Brendan, have you seen Geno Smith this year get caught on a blindside blitz that he didn't see coming? Same kind of blitz we've seen in recent years Wilson get hit on, including this year in Denver. He really knows what he's getting attacked by. So I have to feel like I like my confidence in this matchup and Geno walking up and understanding this week, especially with Wink, that he has to be very, very on it with that. And then when he sees it and the opportunity opens up where those blitz, that if somebody's going to blitz you like Wink is, He's going to create those holes on the deep half of the in center field at that point, and then you just got to go out there and attack. And you, even with DK out of the lineup, as he most likely probably will be in this game, you still have in Goodwin and Tyler Lockett, and maybe even Eskridge, who's got the speed to do it. Guys that can get up there and attack that depth at that point. Say nothing of the tight ends. If you want to run some of those 3 tight ends and have them run some deeper routes at that point and test it out there as well. But that'll be the way to offset that. Hammer somebody if they're going to blitz that much. That's the way you traditionally attack that.
Yeah, when you look at the Giants as a team that hasn't played a good offense yet, I guess this is kind of their wake-up call because we're top 5 right now. We're 5th.
I was
So
going to
they're
say, yeah.
yeah, they're looking at this game like, oh boy, this is our first big challenge all year.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's kind of weird, but we got to start getting mentally in the mode of looking at this Seahawks offense as being one of those top of the league juggernauts until they prove otherwise.
I believe we do. We can look at our level of competition and you can say as much as you want to, but but we had to play Denver Broncos. That's one of the top defenses in the league. We had to play the San Francisco 49ers, which is going to be one of the top defenses in the league. And there's been some easier defenses in there as well built within that, but it hasn't all just been easy peasy all the way through here with the teams that we've been able to play. So we are a top 5 offense. We've run the ball, I think, at like a 5.5 yard per average clip as a team. You have Geno Smith, who's leading the league in completion percentage, 2 points behind Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in quarterback rating, top 4 in QBR, top 5 in average per attempt. All of the markers you'd use to assess a quarterback, he is right up there right now in how he's playing this position. Your tackles are 2 of the better tackles in the way that they're playing on the outsides right now. So, this is going to be the stiff, but we come in with some legitimacy at this point. We're not doing this with smoke and mirrors or by games or some magic tricks, or we're running some kitschy offense here. We're running a hard to defend offense. Chris Sims said it really well this week about you've got to defend every inch of the field with us because we don't just lock into one thing. We're very hard to kind of assess where we're trying to attack with this particular offense this year. It's part of why we've been so good. And Waldron's doing a good job of staying up ahead of the defensive coordinators in their call game. We'll see how the chess match goes between him and Martindale in this game, but he has certainly been one of those guys always seemingly ahead of the curve rather than you're able to guess his plays. Like, oh, this is going to be a run. I'm more often now with Waldron. I've been like, well, this seems like a run look. Oh, he hits him with the pass.
Right. And you add that all up, and I'm not going to do the score prediction yet. We'll do that at the end. I'm feeling this one, and I kind of feel like I shouldn't, but I just can't help myself. I feel good about it. It seems like a good matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at it pretty deep, and there's not a lot shining outside. When you take their record out of it, and you look at everything else just outside of a record point on this, there's nothing necessarily that you go, okay, why should I be the underdog? I'm playing at home in this game. My team's playing at its best right now. I look at the level of competition with the Giants. I look at what they're relying upon and how it is so heavily driven upon Saquon Barkley running and catching the ball and Daniel Jones running the ball. That is their offensive approach basically. And defensively, they've not been great, but again, they've gotten kind of away with it a little bit. I think this is the week that it's just a gut feeling on this. Could be wrong with it, but I feel like there's a lot of reason here to believe we should have some optimism on this particular one, despite the record of where the Giants are at.
The Snail, thank you for the $5. Did you hear Bobby on Sherm's pod? No way he gets booed like Russ, right?
Nope.
It's different. The circumstances are completely different.
You're going to hear nothing. I say you hear just nothing but cheers. The cheers will be so loud you won't hear the boos if the boos are out there. People will recognize the fact Bobby didn't want to go. The organization sent him. Russell wanted to go. Russell forced the trade. Bobby talked about restructuring his contract and being willing to take less money to stay here. There's no way whatsoever that anybody should be in a position to boo Bobby Wagner and when he does return. Should be nothing but cheers for him.
Yeah, I agree. Completely different. And some people are trying to draw like a parallel there, but I think that the differences in the circumstances are clear to pretty much everybody who's been really paying attention.
For Bobby to come and drop that olive branch as he did in the final press conference of the season in the final game is to say, I'm willing to stay here. I'm willing to restructure as his own agent at that point. By the way, he doesn't have an agent, spoke to that. He wanted to finish his career here. And in that same podcast, that's exactly what the sentiment is that he put out there. I wanted to stay in Seattle throughout the course of my whole career. So, I don't know how the fan base can look at that situation. A player played his guts out for you, was rarely injured, played through injury when he helped you to win a Super Bowl when he did. Wanted to stay here through the whole course of his career in the team. That's how do you boo that guy? I just can't see the reason. I can't see why, and I can't see the reason.
Mm-hmm. Big Patty Daddy, thank you for the $1.99. Late to the stream. Go Hawks. Go Gino. I can get behind both those statements.
What's up, Big Patty Daddy? Go Gino, man. And go
Mm-hmm.
Hawks.
Yeah, I can dig it. Byron D, thank you for the $1.99. Is it just me or is Eskridge a great blocker? He is.
He's done pretty good with it. They've had him out there here and there a bit on it. So I don't think
he's like a point guard and he's only good at blocking shots. He's a receiver who's only good at blocking.
There you go. Exactly. Or shooter that's only good at rebounding. Yeah, I guess I can remember a couple of moments of him doing a good job as getting his block sealed out there. And he's a smaller guy, but he's a well-built smaller guy, right? So he's not just a frail kind of, really light, just thin guy. He's got that's why he's so good with the fly sweep game, is he can be kind of like a sub running back at that point. So he's got he's maybe 5'9", but he's got a little bit of bricks in the pants to be able to set down and block.
Yeah. It's like somebody on YouTube made a meme, my player in Madden. He's like, I'm going to make a receiver, but I'm going to give him a 0 in catching, 0 in, ball security, 0 in acceleration, but I'm going to give him 99 in blocking, and I'm going to see what kind of career he has. That's what Dwayne Eskridge is.
It is. As long as he's providing some value to the field, Brendan, I guess, right? Somewhere or another.
Mm-hmm. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5. The Snail, Sherm is basically a Sex in the City guy now, right? He's as valuable as any of those women on that show today. I'm not following. I didn't watch that show. I did not watch that show, so I'm not sure what this is getting at here.
I missed it as well. I never was interested in that one myself.
Yeah. But it seems like Sherm's doing okay on Amazon.
He seems fine. I think he's going to take off very well. Look, this is going to suit him well. He's going to have a fine career post football and commentating and doing all that stuff, I'm sure. So, yeah, he'll find his comfort. It'll take a little while to get, all these things. It's a new thing, so it'll probably take him a while to get into his comfort zone, but he'll get there.
Yeah. All right. So I think we've talked about this game, all that it needs to be talked about. Giants offense, meh. Giants defense, playing above their head, but not necessarily something we're scared by.
No.
So with all that being said, what are you thinking for let's do a score here.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to see both teams running the ball well to some degree, which is going to shorten the game. I think we'll do a better job of stopping the run to where it's not going to run wild, but I think you're going to only be able to contain an attack that wants to be that committed to the run so much, even with an 8-man box. But I don't see a high scoring game in this one. I do think we're going to win it by a touchdown. So I'm going to go 21-14 or 21-13. Okay.
I can get behind that. I am going to go 27-17.
Okay. I like it.
A few more points. I think there's a few more points. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying I think we're a better team, but I think this matchup favors us. There's just something about it that screams we can handle our business in this game to me.
Well said. That's a key point here, Brendan, which is that football is not a game about records matching up. Our record is this, your record is that. It's a stylistic game. What matches up against what can give what a hard time versus another. And I think stylistically, as we match up in this particular game, I think we fit very well for being able to attack their weaknesses. And I think there's strengths that we can combat with, especially if we're not going to run that wonky 4-man front, Brendan, that was just getting crushed early in the year. 2-man front, as you put it.
Yeah, right. That's obviously a big part. If we tried to run that in this game, they'd run for like 300 yards. It'd be like a college game.
All day. They'd never pass. Right. It'd be the first game in NFL history that a quarterback didn't actually throw.
Last thing we should touch on here real quick. Has anything caught your attention in regards to trade deadline stuff in the last couple of days? Like, is there anything you want to do?
Nothing that jumps out to me other than the Roquan Smith trade. It continues to, and remains to be one that's the straightforward one to me that makes, the most sense. I would like to see, absent that, still some kind of deal made. I think that with the draft capital you're sitting on, and maybe there's not enough teams out there to trade with, that there's just a player that makes sense. But there are some key positions on this team that could probably use some help if you can go out there and find it. And maybe it doesn't exist. I'm totally open to the fact that this new 17-game season, the trade deadline not moving, there might not just be enough teams in sell mode to get it done. But if you can go out there and get Roquan and you can talk him for a third rounder plus maybe a fifth, sixth rounder even, and somehow make that pull through, try to make that deal if you're Seattle. Go make that deal because he's going to be a guy you're going to target possibly in free agency anyway when it's all said and done. Maybe, maybe not. But one that I'd be open to seeing. He's balling out for them right now. I just can't help but think he'd really help this defense out, continue to kind of ratchet things down. And again, Brendan, we're talking about this defense doing something we've seen similar the last couple of years, where it starts out bad and then it gets good through the end of the year, right? What was though a big injection point of that turnaround through those 2 years? And that is it's the Diggs trades, the Dunlap trade. It's getting that guy at the trade deadline you're bringing in to really shore up something that's really a real tough weakness on the team right now. And that's what I'd love to see them do again.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Were you interested in Robert Quinn at all before he got traded?
Not really, because there's other positions that are just more we could upgrade, I think. I know I threw out the offensive line because of the cohesion, but I wouldn't be completely out on that if it was a guy that, was like, okay, that the coaching staff was like, no, this is really a pure scheme fit. And he's going to help us now and into the future. I'm open to that. I'm open to a receiver out there as far as it goes. I don't know about the pass rusher being, because again, I'm not sure that's the issue right now. I think with Uchenna and I think with Boye Mafe early downs as run defenders, you're set. You have Darrell Taylor coming out as your rotational guy, along with Irvin to be the fourth guy, and still Alton Robinson to return at some point. Or maybe you're not getting the star power in there, but you're fine. You're good enough. The middle linebacker position, though, Brendan, the defensive ends, that's to me places that I can get maybe more, maybe even safety. I know Neal played great in this last game, but do you think he's a 93 guy every game going forward? Or do you think he's probably more like the 57, 56 PFF guy that he's been in most of the games that he started out there at safety?
Well, even if you like Neal, we don't really have any depth at safety.
No.
Who's the next man up? Josh Jones, and we've already seen how that works.
Say nothing of maybe if we could find somebody to push Mr. Diggs over at free safety, who's not exactly been lighting the world on fire either to start things off this year.
He just had his best game of the year, I think, though. Maybe.
It wasn't. No, if that was his best game. It was still.
I mean, I thought he looked better.
I got it right here. Hold on. Where is it? Had it here somewhere. Quandre Diggs 58.2.
Okay. I mean, PFF does a terrible job of capturing Diggs' value anyway. I honestly feel
they suck. They suck at that part. That's one of those positions they've never done him very right. So maybe he turns it around. I'm just saying, I still, if I look at pass rusher versus free safety, what's been the bigger need? What's been the worst play? What's projecting forward going to be the bigger potential issue to me? I look at that, or strong safety, or middle linebacker, or defensive ends. Okay. I'd be pretty low on that list to get to pass rushers.
Yeah. I will say I still want to trade Sidney Jones because there's no point in having him here. But in terms of bringing in somebody, there are some guys I'm open to. Like I really think we could use a little receiver depth right now because I feel like Metcalf's going to miss a couple games.
I do too. And I think too, it's between Lockett and Metcalf, you've been very good about their health recently. We've been very lucky with those guys. Metcalf's up until this game coming up has played every game of his career. And Lockett, for as older as he's getting his career, has been able to play basically almost every game. So it's been great to have, but you probably don't want to rely on it. And Eskridge hasn't quite come forward enough to really feel like you're comfortable there. So I think that does lead you back to, I'm open to doing that. I'm definitely, and again, too, receiver versus what you pay for defensive end prices, much more depressed. Much easier to get a receiver that's functional. You're not, though I'll say the Chiefs 3rd and 6 for Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, I thought the Giants were going to have to give him away. Did you see what Toney tweeted after the trade, by the way?
No, what did he say?
He basically implied he was faking the injury so they would have to get rid of him because he didn't want to be there anymore. I mean,
I was going to say that about him, and I was like, I was going to measure my words with it, Brendan, because I'm like, how dare I say that about a player, like infer that? But everything about that situation felt like he was faking that injury and the way he was playing that with the coaching staff. So like, a player if I hear that about any player ever like that, I don't want you on my team. That attitude is going to permeate its way one way or another at some point, and sooner than faster. And I love Kadarius Toney coming out of the draft, but I don't buy him going to Percy Harvin was a head case in the Vikings, and he was a head case when he got to us. That's how that plays out more often than not. Antonio Brown was a head case of the Steelers and a head case everywhere else he went. That's the way it plays out. If you're going to be that way, and I'm sorry, you're a professional football player and you're faking injuries, you're now a head case in my estimation of things. That's inexcusable.
Right. Yeah, if I'm the Chiefs, I offer like the 6th rounder alone, and I'm like, take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it. Like that's they're just one of the most dynamic open field runners in the sport,
Oh
no
yeah.
doubt about it. And it's just, I know it brings you in, but so is Percy Harvin, one of the fastest, most explosive guys. It can suck you in, but you'll get fooled. And again, Brendan, I always like to apply the historical lessons that we can apply to modern age that we've run across a couple of times before.
One more super chat here. Jason Patrick, thank you for the $2. Trey Brown is back soon. Will he start at cornerback? We actually talked about this at the top here. I think we both kind of landed on not until somebody loses their job.
Yeah, Jason, I think that when the team looked at moving Kobe Bryant to the slot a couple weeks back, that it was done with the intention and thought process that when Trey Brown came back, they'd have Kobe well acclimated to the slot, and then Trey could slide right into the outside, as opposed to keeping Kobe on the outside. And then what do you have going on once he comes back? I think Michael Jackson's play has made this a much harder decision, and it's a great problem to have in that he's really played well throughout the course of this year. I think they'll just have Michael Jackson on a short rope here, a short hook. And if he does start to backtrack or has a really bad game, I think Trey Brown will quickly be coming back out onto the field. So I think the team's going to kind of not upending things right now as the defense has played so well of the last couple of weeks. First in DVOA over the last 2 weeks of the season, verse 31st through the first part of the year. I think that's going to push them to say, let's not break it if it isn't broken.
Yeah, I think that sums it up fairly well. I like Trey Brown still. I think he has something in the NFL going that he can do, but right now we've got something good going. I don't really want to mess with it. Bottom line.
Me neither. That's my bottom line as well. I think he's got good potential. I think he's going to factor into this future, Jason. So, he will eventually do that, but this is the benefit of having a guy like Michael Jackson come along like he has and be an unexpected surprise.
All right, so that's going to be the pregame stream for Seahawks hosting the Giants. It's a very interesting game, very compelling. Going to be a lot of eyes on that one, and whoever wins, people are going to start taking them seriously. Whoever wins, people are going to be like, that might be an NFC contender. You're seeing all these supposed NFC contenders fall by the wayside here. Tampa Bay looks pretty done. Green Bay looks on the brink of being done. So why not us? Why not us? So big game. I want to thank Brandon for coming out to talk about it tonight. We went for about 2 hours, got up close to about 400 people at one point.
Let's
had
go.
350 throughout. We will do this again next week on Tuesday after the game. We're going to talk about hopefully us doing the things that we talked about and finding a way to get this win. And thank you to everybody for coming out to the stream tonight. And before we let you go, we got to do it one more time, going into this game that will, in many ways, determine how the rest of the season goes, I think. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.